news flash, not fake news.
Say something about it, Pete. What do you think?
It was great.
All right, good. Moving on.
Are you okay? My soul. Devil's in the system, guys.
We need to stop and pray. Good evening and welcome to The Brook on Canaan Radio. It's good to be back in the studio once again. I went and got myself a radio voice over the week. Now just a little under the weather, but it's good to be back again together here in the studio with the fam. Brother David, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. Pastor Reeves.
Fantastic.
I even paused because I wanted to make sure that I didn't just run you over.
I'm doing great. Had a great week this week. Went to the Baptist Leadership Conference. Had a good time.
Yep, we did. Talk about that more here in a
Yes,
second.
we will.
Brother Peter, how are you?
Good.
Good. He had a week away from us. He's great. Just kidding. Brother JT up in the booth as well. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Good. Mrs. Reeves, Miss Jewel.
Hello. Good.
Mrs. Jewel. Sorry. Mrs. Jewel.
Mrs. Jewel.
Mrs.
I have the hardest time when I preach chapel or lead chapel because I always call her Jewel, but to all the students it's Mrs. Ward.
Mrs. Ward.
So I have a hard time with that.
Do you know how long it took me before I changed her contact from Jewel Reeves to Jewel Ward? It was a long time. Court, how are you?
Great. Thanks.
Good. I just didn't. I'm not even going to try Mrs. I'll get it wrong and then hope.
Good. How are you?
All right. I'm good. We're good. All right, everybody. We can talk about Pastor. Do you want to kick things off?
I will. Left church Sunday night. Brother David and his wife, Courtney, and Will and his wife, and went to and daughter. We took the little one and got in vehicles and drove 6 hours basically till we got to what city was that?
Salina.
Salina, Kansas, and then stayed in a hotel, then got up early and headed the rest of the way in to the Baptist Leadership Conference at Parkside Baptist Church with Dr. Wells, and it was good. Had a good week.
It's
a lot of
very
good preaching and good fellowship, so it was a good week.
Amen.
Good.
It was nice. The weather was beautiful.
It was.
Every day. It's like in the 70s.
It's mild.
Yeah. Of course, I heard that it was pretty good here, too. Was it in the 80s?
It got hot here. Didn't it get
80s?
Got us
90s?
90.
Oh, man.
93.
Wow.
Skip
93.
spring, straight to summer,
Well,
and then back to winter today.
Yesterday, too.
Yeah. On the way back, as we were driving, it progressively got colder and windier until we finally made it to Nebraska. Opened the door. Snowstorm. No, just kidding. But it was definitely a lot colder.
While we were driving.
Right. Open the door while we were driving.
While we were driving.
No, I'm saying when we got back.
He didn't drive.
I
You're
meant
right.
we
While
as in a group.
While they
I
were
kept
driving.
looking back, and Dave was all curled up on his wife's lap.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I tried to drive. He wouldn't let me. So
The attempt was epic. Let me tell you.
I asked. I said,
Blood screams.
want me to drive? He said no. So that was that.
It was so nice down there. I got my hubby to go on a walk with me twice.
Whoa.
Now tell the truth.
He offered.
I got you.
You're right. The first day you got me to go on the walk,
That's right.
and the second day,
You asked if we were going to. I said sure.
Right.
I said sure.
it was so nice.
It was beautiful. But back to purgatory.
what? Talking about it. It's
To the
frozen
windy
over here.
plains.
It's not purgatory.
Yeah, it's the opposite.
It's too cold to be purgatory.
The wind is blowing straight from the
Is
north.
it going to be cold tomorrow? I know with the...
It's supposed to be 10 whole degrees warmer.
It's supposed to be nice and sunny.
Yeah,
It won't be
60
bad.
degrees and full
Oh,
sun.
is it sunny now?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
good.
Does anybody else need to mow their lawn already?
Spots,
Mine is
like
We did.
little grass
Little
spots
spots.
here.
4
and
inches
there.
tall,
Yeah,
right next to the front door.
It's getting there. But I have to do my sprinkler system first.
I may not even need to turn mine on.
Sprinkler system here over at Harmony Hall needs fixed before we turn it back on.
Who broke it?
What happened?
I'm not sure, but whoever did the plowing, I think just
Oh, hit one of the
far
heads.
and hit the head,
It's probably David.
broke it off. That's the way it goes, man. That's just par for the course. You know what I'm saying?
No, the other way. Mm-hmm.
Would it be this way?
You're pointing
Where are you pointing to?
that. Yep. Yep, up and nope to the right.
What are you pointing
Yep,
to?
up
There
and
you
to the
go.
left.
What's
I
he
mean, your
pointing?
left.
To Dad.
On the camera. There we go.
Oh,
There like Brady
okay.
Bunch.
Everybody look up, down,
least I can
over,
look at you.
sideways.
He did it.
Yeah.
Can't reach into my frame. This is my frame.
I've got arms in my frame. And
Do I need to move that over? That'd be more comfortable.
It's a great day. Out bus visiting today. Actually, it was kind of cold and gloomy. Not a lot of people home, but we did have some visitors that are supposed to come tomorrow. Actually, Brooke and her boyfriend Calvin. Hopefully, prayerfully, and their 2 kids are supposed to come tomorrow.
Right?
So
That would be great.
that would be.
Yeah, Courtney was telling me about that.
We've been stopping at their house for a couple weeks now, and I've been talking to the boyfriend. This is the first time I got her to come to the door, so she's much more lively response.
Yeah, she's very responsive.
Yes. It's one of the things I've learned here. It's like very often you get that sort of like they're just like shaking their head at you, like yeah. It's like, so you want to do that? I don't know. Come on. We have cookies.
Now, she trusted Christ. Did anybody talk to him yet?
Not yet. No.
Okay.
Nope. First time I got him home, the dog was running around.
Yeah.
Kids were screaming, and then I think every time after that I stopped, he wasn't home. And then I think last week or 2 weeks ago he was home, and told him about Easter Sunday and stuff. And then today I didn't see him. So, but
Well, good.
Ken and I had a visit today. The guy's name is Andrew. He said that he's off on Sunday mornings. He said that it sounded like he wanted to come, so we'll see if he comes. If he doesn't come tomorrow, we'll be hitting him up again because he was pretty positive about wanting to find a church. So
man,
Oh, and Courtney and I knocked on a door, and the lady answered the door. And when I said where our church was, right around the corner, because we were on, was it William? I think William.
I think so.
So it's just two streets over from the church where we're meeting for the program. And she said that her husband helped build that church.
no,
wow.
Yeah. So I
Was he
pushed
there?
kind of hard for her to, come and see all the renovations and see everything. And so she seemed pretty positive. I don't know. It was really cold, so she was trying to shut the door after just a few minutes because she was older. She's elderly.
Did her husband pass away?
I didn't
She
think.
didn't say so.
No, it sounded like that he was still.
Yeah.
Cool.
if he comes, I have a lot of questions.
Why did you do this?
What
was this
what
over
were
here?
you thinking?
Did you have
much-
any part of this?
How much glue did you put on that?
yes. I doubt that's the original
No, it's
carpet.
not.
No.
Oh no, the red is
The red upstairs, yeah, that's
Yeah.
probably the original.
The red was everywhere.
Is it red,
All the
though?
way from Emily's
Or
office.
orange.
Bright
Orange.
No, it's red.
It's like an
was.
orange.
It was
It's an
red.
orangey.
It's been bleached into orange.
It's blood orange, which is red,
It's
basically.
like the Red Bull color right there. It's like a reddish.
Red Bull.
It was red.
Reddish.
yeah.
That is, yeah.
Jeff has a question for you, Pastor Reeves.
We don't ask questions to the
We're
end.
doing just kidding.
But he has to
Kidding,
wait.
hard ones like
It's
that.
a hard one, so you have to wait till the end.
Where is the weather better? Canton, Ohio, or your hometown in Nebraska? Well, Jeff, I left.
Depends on the day.
I left Canton, Ohio,
When you were 17.
37 years ago. I don't know how old I was. Anyway, a long time ago. So I don't know what it's like now there, but I think we have even seasons here.
Except for the 90 degrees, then the 50 degrees.
Well, even seasons. They're just
We
all
have
in the same week.
even seasons, yeah. We have all the same week.
I'm gonna say here it's like
I think wherever people are at, they find a way to complain about the weather. So
At least
But-
we don't have tornadoes every
Why
other
don't
week.
we have more variety? You know.
yeah, I know when we were in Texas, it was beautiful, but we were both walking, and my wife said I couldn't be here in the summer though because it would
Yeah, it's April and it was perfect, but you could imagine.
So she wasn't even there when it was hot and she was complaining.
Wow, way to go.
Just eat your ice cream cone, okay? Enjoy life. Can't you be a little positive? Hanging out with David the whole week, I have had to try to be more positive in my life. So.
Just give him
How did
opportunity
I
to
do?
play devil's advocate.
How did I do? See, he won't answer because
C+.
he's trying to stay positive. He's trying
Got
to
to
stay
put
positive.
a positive spin on the C.
Like what I
huh?
did there?
Yeah.
F plus.
F plus. Wow, that's pretty bad.
Stay positive.
I'll tell you what.
What is that? A 68? Oh wow.
That's good. It's good.
It's good.
I missed everybody.
We missed you.
Dude,
It's good to be back.
I made a blunder during church. I missed church, so I say I missed church. I got to back up a second. I missed being at home for service on Wednesday night. So
Yes.
Wednesday night I was checking the live stream.
Yes.
Of course, I'm in church.
Yes.
I've got my phone. I have a brand new case on my phone, and so the volume buttons they're very sensitive, you know.
Oh no.
So
He's rock music.
I
went
get
on.
yeah. So I get it open, and it's muted.
That's why that happened?
Yeah, that's why that happened. It's muted, and I'm checking the live stream, and I had to do a couple other things to get it up. And so I get the live stream, and I'm like, oh, okay. I was like, I need to check and see if the sound works. So I turned it up just a hair, just like a little bit. And when I flipped my phone up to go like this, I squeezed it on the volume up button, and I put it up to my ear, and all of a sudden Peter is singing, in the middle of church, just
So
like
everybody heard
blasting loud.
Peter's
Oh, thanks.
singing.
And I'm
claim
like,
to fame.
I'm like garbage
For the
like,
Palmore.
turning it down.
Right.
I'm like,
I put my phone down. And Dad does the slow lean out, like, okay,
What
what's going on here?
You feel
It's
it.
not like the whole crowd wasn't used to noises coming from that
That's-
side of the
that's
auditorium.
true.
Though.
That
That's
is
where all
true.
the kids sat. And,
Actually, that wasn't the worst phone one. Somebody had
Someone
their
else had one.
somebody
That was
had
so
some like
funny.
rock music
They
or
did.
something.
That was so funny.
It was like they were
I
scrolling
don't
through the
understand
reels or
people
something.
that are, they're in the ministry, and I know who the people were that it happened to, and I met them years and years ago, and I remember having a conversation with them, and the wife asked me, well, what's wrong with selling cigarettes at Walmart to customers? And I just sometimes want to take my head and beat it against the wall when people that are in the ministry, pastor, assistant pastors, and they just can't see how that's probably not the best job in the world for
Right.
somebody like, anyway. So it was her husband's phone, and it's like, wicked music is wicked. I'm like, guys, don't even hide it. I mean, just,
Entertain.
but
Keeps
I
things
felt bad
interesting.
for him because they got busted in front of God and everybody. So,
Well, you wanted to get attention once this week, too. You were saying amen real
Oh,
loud.
that was
and
funny.
he
That was
raised
great.
his Bible and all
I
the
got
papers.
excited and I
That
stood
was
up.
great.
That's
Oh,
Matt
no.
Miller's fault.
Yeah, it was.
Brother Matt comes in the beginning of the service. He goes, "This place is dead. Let's get it livened up. Come on, brother Bill, let's do it." And so he starts
kept
saying,
looking
amen,
back
and
at
he's
us.
looking back at
Yeah.
me, going, cupping his ear back, like,
come on,
back
get
towards
in.
me, and we're getting into the song. So, of course, Brother Matt only gets excited
Yeah.
about the song service.
Right.
Once the preaching started, he's like, he got real quiet. But one time something was said, and I got real excited. Stood up and waved my Bible and all my papers.
Yeah, it did like flew out. He was like,
into the hall.
hey,
Down the aisle. I
man.
said,
All right, in the
okay,
aisle.
what do you do
Right in the
now? Sit down and ignore it, or pick them up?
That's a cute old man moment.
I didn't care. Bless God.
Mindy Wells said she saw that. She said,
Oh
I
man.
saw that.
Oh man, Mindy, that's not nice to say.
I don't think
didn't
anybody.
see
I don't know
it,
how you
must
could
have
miss it.
been blind, right?
It was pretty funny.
But no, we had a great week.
It was great.
It was exciting.
Good preaching,
Good fellowship.
great singing.
Good food.
Enjoyed the specials.
Yeah.
There was really one awesome session.
No, don't even do that.
Was that one with Brother Wells? I'm just kidding.
Yes,
that's the
he did
only
stop
one.
in. Brother
One.
Wells, Brother Ray,
So my family and and Josh
and Brother
Mindy.
Palmore.
Yeah,
There
he
were-
was-
there were
was he
folks
there.
there.
Yeah, he was in there.
There were a few folks there.
Did any of you go to Brother Palmore's session?
I did. I went
did?
to his
Okay.
music one. Yes, I did. I went to his music one.
So I know
It was
why
good,
ours
very
was
practical.
empty. We were competing with Brother what's the president's name?
Oh, Brother Bachman?
Yeah, he did a security one. And
He
a
had the
assault
rifle. Yeah, he had the rifle.
Oh,
So everybody was
everyone
in
has
there.
seen the
I want to see the gun.
I saw him walk across the hallway, and immediately my head goes, "Man, I'm going to the wrong.
Yeah,
I'm going to the wrong
right.
session."
You should have gone. I like it.
No, it's all good.
Yeah, I
was
started.
crazy.
I started the session. I knew I was going to have to fly through my notes, and all of a sudden the door opens, and in comes Brother Ray Young and Brother
Yeah.
Wells. I'm like, oh great. It's like,
What'd you say? I'm being graded by my
I was going
teachers.
to say, they sit down, continue with your book report.
and they sat down, got their notepads out. I'm like,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
I'm sunk.
It was great. It was good. Very practical. Very helpful.
Hey, you had a nice printout. Did you do that, or did they just ask you
took
to give
my
them-
notes
and they did
that
it?
I did up and sent to them.
Nice.
Yeah.
And then at the end, they give everybody a like a QR code with a link to all of the sessions.
Yeah,
so like
that's
if
a
you
great
didn't get to
idea.
go to one, you
You
still
can go
got
back
like
and
the
watch
notes, right? Right.
Oh,
You got
just
the notes and the. They didn't record
Did
though.
they record
the,
any?
It's just the notes.
Just the notes.
But
But
I
I guess
noticed they
they
put out on Twitter all the pictures of all the guys that taught the sessions, and I didn't make the grade.
Oh no.
where was that? I guess I didn't see it.
Funny.
But it was neat because, and Brother Palmore said that. He said that usually they do like a fill in the blank thing. So people fill in the blanks. So they decided not to do it because what they had was teachers would go long and then they wouldn't get the rest of the information.
I did not do fill in the blanks, but I gave him 3 pages of notes.
Yep. That's actually how much I got from Brother Palmore. So I seem to be
Yeah,
about
most
average.
of them that we were in were
We're
about two, three. Yeah.
Oh, really?
3 pages, yeah. Yours was pretty on
They just-
point with everybody.
And
They just read faster.
most of the sessions that I was in, they didn't
He got through
finish
the whole
notes.
thing. Oh.
Yeah.
Brother Palmore finished
He said
his.
I thought he told me this morning he ran out of time.
I did.
Well, he didn't do the verses.
I didn't do the verses, and I didn't read the last 2 sections. I don't think I just said their information, but it was good. It was good. Glad it was fun going.
Got to get a tour of their media stuff, and
Yeah.
that was interesting to see how they do things.
He went up in the sound booth during
Oh
one of
man,
the-
that was funny.
during one of the services and messed up the words on the
No,
screen and
no,
everything.
I didn't mess up.
Yeah, I
anything.
noticed when you went up there,
Yeah, he was
everything
up there
just like went
pressing
haywire.
buttons and messing things up.
That's what you would think I was doing, but I didn't. I just the very, very last part of the conference. I was like, "Hey, do you mind if I sit up here and watch how you guys do your live stream? Would that be okay?" And Brother Josh got permission and made sure it was okay. And so, the very last part of the conference, I went up there. I walk in, I sit down, and immediately things start going wrong. The guy that was running the soundboard, he was struggling with getting the mix right for the special, and I think I had distracted him a little bit. And then the guys that were trying to get the words up on the screen couldn't figure out because they had a different guy in there. It was interesting. It was fun to watch when they got it figured out, but they were all.
It wasn't fun when they were going crazy.
I was
wasn't
like,
supposed to
because
go
I felt bad. I felt like there's like, can I help? But I just be afraid to touch anything.
So funny. As soon as something went wrong, I was like, turning to look in the sound booth, see if you were in there.
I was
running
laughing
around.
because I'm watching Josh on the platform,
He-
and he's got his
he's
phone
got
out.
his
He's
phone,
texting,
exactly.
and then finally everything went right, and I saw him put his phone down and look up. I'm like,
Well, they finally got the words up on the screens.
yeah.
They were the
everything
wrong
was over.
screens. Their screens behind the singers instead of them in front of them. So
Yeah. They were on the other screens too, but
right, but
They went
they
to
were
all the
only
screens.
they were only supposed to be.
Oh,
on the-
that's why they were on the ones
But it was-
behind. I wondered.
But
'cause
they
I was like,
came on after the whole song was
Right,
over.
and then he
those
couldn't
poor
figure out-
kids were scared to death
They were.
and had no words.
And the
to-
story, I guess, is that Brother Palmore had gotten a text from their mom saying, "Hey, please make sure that they get the words up on the screens because they're struggling to remember them during practice." And so they're up there singing, and I'm like, man, they're doing a great job for, they obviously practiced a bunch.
And it was
so
a
that
long
they-
song.
Yeah, it was a long song, but
lot
they
of
did great.
words.
They did great, and they were flying without those words up there.
We
so.
should do
want
that
words
next time.
on the
Yeah,
screen
for the
when
bus
I
conference,
sing.
we should put
No.
those words on.
No
yes,
words on the
absolutely.
screens.
You don't
Why
need
the
it.
kids just
Bouncing ball.
Pastor.
Yes,
yeah,
you
the
do.
bouncing ball.
Oh,
the bouncing
great
ball.
debate. The bouncing ball.
The longer I watch my son, David, move forward, the
Hey,
more I
hey.
feel like
He's not.
He's moving backwards.
It's called
You got to temper that with positivity, there, Dad.
I feel like
innovation.
I think the best thing to do is make sure Bud gets to church.
Yes. Yes.
His plan.
As long as I get your truck.
You can have the building.
Oh man.
Yeah.
But it was a great week. Enjoyed being down there. Been down there a few. I've been down there a few times, but I've never had a chance to actually get to see the properties and set up and talk to people as much. So
Yeah,
great fellowship.
a little bit more open door right now. So I think
good.
they were trying to suck you in, hoping that you would move and take over a lot of the stuff.
Yeah.
Subliminal message. You know.
Have you seen the mess we got here?
I was going to say they don't want them.
This is a much better mess.
A better mess?
Yes, because it's smaller.
It's your
yeah.
mess.
Yeah, it's
Smaller
my mess. Yeah.
Smaller mess
At
is
least
a better mess.
that pile of cords in the closet, I know where everything goes to. It's still a mess, but I know
It's
where
like
they
this,
go.
yeah, like that server room that
What is this? Oh.
Yeah, exactly. What
server room that he had. Josh
Oh,
had
yeah,
cleaned
he
out.
cleaned it out.
Just stuck my head in there, looked around, like, looks like Bud's server room. Let me turn around and leave.
Quick,
or something
before I get-
attacks me.
I love it when you open up a
Before I get
closet and you look in
entangled.
and it has all the service stuff, and then you see the baptistry stairs and you see the,
Oh, yeah.
you know,
It's just like ours, just tucked away in a corner
Wow, you guys
somewhere.
long as you
really
put a
got like the
door.
behind
We
the
got the
scenes.
VIP pass.
Oh, yeah.
I wonder if Brother Wells is regretting it at this moment.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Pull back the curtain.
Pay no attention to the man.
Yeah.
Behind the curtain.
That's how it is, really. That old man sitting there running the levers, you
Yeah.
know, and
Hey,
steam
no
and all that. That's, I guarantee you, that's what Josh feels like.
Probably. Yeah, probably. Oh, man.
I think we could probably stand for a song right about now.
Sure, let's do it. Let's go to a song and we'll come back. Start the main segment here. Hello, Brother McMurtry. I just saw he jumped in there on the chat. You can text us 920-940-8275, a song request during the show. And then, of course, at the end of the show, we have the segment, The Third Degree, where you ask us the difficult questions. You can text us that question, 920-940-8275, or you can just ask in the YouTube live stream chat. We're going to go ahead and play a song now. Marion Avenue Baptist Church Choir singing, I've Never Been This Homesick Before. We'll be right back.
Episode 6, In Good Company. This has been a great bunch of segments that we've been having on the program on growing up IFB. And today we get to talk about the subject matter of who we fellowship with, or what are our influences, or what we have had influence us. Job chapter 38:31 said, Canst thou bind the sweet influences of Pleiades, or loose the bands of Orion? Pleiades are a small cluster of stars that shine the brightest before spring, and the Orion is best seen right before winter. We learned that even these stars leave an influence on us. So you think about it, you're looking up at the stars, and you see the band of Orion. You know it's time to get out the parkas, the jackets and stuff like that, and get the snow shovels ready and stuff like that. But that's the only verse in the whole Bible that uses the word influences. And but it teaches the lesson that we are affected by things. I'm reminded of Mark Twain, as he once said, "Clothes make the man. Naked people have little or no influence on society."
Oh, dear.
True.
First, got to start it off with a bang, you know. 1 Corinthians 5:6 says, "Your glorying is not good. Know ye not that a little leaven leaveneth the whole lump?" It just takes a little bit of a bad thing to cause the whole thing to go bad. 1 Corinthians 15:33 says, "Be not deceived. Evil communications corrupt good manners." There again, we see how bad communications or evil communications has an influence on the way we act, our manners. A lot of the kids in our movement have terrible manners. You say, how come, why is it like that? Well, probably because they don't have a mom and dad that say to them all the time, hey, let's be positive. Right?
Yes.
That's good preaching right there.
That's it.
Proverbs 13:20 says, he that walketh with wise men shall be wise, but a companion of fools shall be destroyed. Proverbs 27:17, iron sharpeneth iron, so a man sharpeneth the countenance of his friends. Proverbs 22:6 tells us to train up a child in the way he should go. And when he is old, he'll not depart from it. So obviously when you're training a child, training means that you do something over and over and over again until they get it. But you got to train them in the way they should go. So having them exposed to the wrong ways is going to put the wrong influences on their life. Having them exposed to the right ways will put the right influences. It's one of the reasons I wouldn't let you guys get involved in Little League sports, and even though we could have put you in some of those pee-wee sports, being homeschooled, but the surrounding and the other kids, bad environment. Proverbs 26:4 says, answer not a fool according to his folly. Why not? Lest thou also be like unto him. So honestly, sometimes we spend too much time on Twitter, social media, answering these fools. And we need to, you can answer them once, twice, but then you need to block them. Block them.
Blocking you.
Blocking blesses me. That's good stuff right there. I love the independent Baptist guys who get so sissifiedly hurt because they got blocked. But they generally are just wanting to start debates. And we're not supposed to debate according to the Bible. So, and then Psalm 1. Man, it's good. Mm-hmm. Blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly. What? Nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful. Then it goes on to talk about the right kind of influences. So we'd be blessed when you're not in the wrong company. Raising our kids, it's very important, as Jill and I saw the great need to make sure that we guarded our children's influences young in life while they were not able to do it, and to not just guard them, but teach them why we had those guards and how we came to that, and gave them Bible instructions on those things. Because when they got older, of course, they got free time or time away from us or time around people that they would have to decide, are these the people I'm going to make friends? And they needed to be able to have a set of guides and principles by where they could choose their influences on their life. Now, I will tell you this. I think the number one thing that I think Mom and I have always felt, the greatest way for us to teach our kids to stay away from the wrong influences is to feel the responsibility to be a good influence on everyone around them. Mm-hmm. So that was, to me, what we pushed the most. So when we would get around people and they would be with kids or whatever, and those kids would do something wrong, they felt the responsibility to speak up and say, hey, we don't do that, or hey, we don't say that. Not because they were correcting them, but because they were trying to be a good influence, because iron sharpeneth iron. And if you want to have a real friend, not an evangelist type friend that you put on social media, we're friends. You got to be able to look at someone and sharpen them, knowing that at some time they will need to sharpen you. There's no one, you don't have a friendship where one person has the upper hand to always be the one that's the leader. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so anyway, I thought we would talk a little bit about it. And today we have, of course, my kids are in here, and then asking Pete to chime in a little bit and his background. And then also Courtney came from a larger church. We pretty much have all, well, Pete, you experienced bigger churches, I guess, mostly other than Japan. But your younger years and then your college years were all in bigger places. Mm-hmm. But Courtney grew up her whole life in a larger church and having more opportunity to be influenced. So we'll just start off and turn to Mrs. Reeves and ask her what you'd like to say about this.
Well, it just reminds me of a couple weeks ago, I think, I can't remember what we were talking about, and Hope was talking about how the strings that held her to her parents or to the good things, and her not having a family on the side like that, or a group of influences that she was developing aside from her godly family and her godly church friends, things like that, is what really did help her when she struggled. And just thinking about those strings is what I was thinking about today. And I thought, how the Bible says for young people to give their heart to their parents. My son, give me thine heart.
Right.
And I think every relationship a child has as they're growing up begins to form those attachments. And we even call it, are they attached? Are they, and they form these bonds of responsibility, association, that's not the words I'm looking for, of loyalty to things. It's one of the reasons we talk about, when we do talk about music, how it influences, because you begin to develop loyalties to the relationships that you have. And so realizing that when kids are young, that's the time to really guard, because we think, oh, well, they're not influencing that much. They're 5 years old, they're 6 years old, they're 7 years old, they're 8 years old. They're not a teenager, but those times, every single one of those relationships are forming loyalties in their mind and in their heart. And if you're allowing loyalties and attachments, we've even talked about kids who get all wrapped up with maybe like Star Wars things, and all their loyalties get,
Right.
And it affects them.
Yeah.
It affects them all the way into adulthood. And I, seeing as this is growing up IFB, I guess just looking back at my growing up, I honestly feel like this was the hardest struggle in my family. My dad took our church. No one else had standards. Okay, they had standards, but they didn't have our standards. The ladies didn't always dress like ladies. And so being surrounded all the time with people that didn't have the same beliefs as I did, and then going to a Christian school, starting there in 4th grade and on up all the way to high school, and their standards, my classmates' standards by the time I graduated were very different than mine. And the effect I saw that have on my siblings. I just think when we went, into marriage and discussing our kids, that's something I really just really felt deeply about, because of watching the struggle of my siblings, go stay the night at have a slumber party at someone's house when they're a teen, and they go to the mall and they get cigarettes out of the vending machine, and they she pierces her ears, and she does all these things because the group was doing it, and just watching them struggle with things that there was just no need for that. So I think this is just a vital subject, and people hate it. They just feel like you're being so controlling when you don't necessarily allow your kids to be the kind of friend that they want your kids to be with them, and have the freedoms, and for you just to let go and understand that they're good people too. And family especially, that's hard.
I think that one of the things about this subject matter it's very seldom talked about is I think you have to understand, as parents, you are tasked with the safekeeping of the children that God has given you. You're a steward of those children. So how those children turn out is largely because of what you allowed in their life and what you didn't allow in their life, and what you did do and what you didn't do. I think often the Bible verse, "Child left to himself bringeth his mother to shame," and I think one of the biggest criticisms we had is we always controlled our children. We went somewhere they couldn't just run wild in the church. They couldn't run on the platform. They got the fire beat out of them when we got home if they did anything like that. I mean, it wasn't a talking to. A lot of times in parents these days, they want to talk to their kids and they want to reason with their kids. And God made you bigger than them for a reason, because that's not your job. to reason with them. Your job is to teach them. And training someone, they have to understand, even monkeys understand this, if you choose the wrong thing, there's an unpleasant response that comes from that choice that you make. And so a child has to experience that unpleasant response, and that's a physical response, and that's what the Bible teaches. And you only have a short window in which you can train that child properly in the physical response until they get bitter about. See, people get started in church late, and what do I do about my teenagers? Well, you want to tell them, take them out back and beat the living tar out of them, but the truth is that no teenager would respond when you've grown up without any discipline or any physical discipline. No teenager would respond well to that. And then also, no parent at this point would even be able to make themselves do that anyway. So we controlled our children. They sat in the same row with us at church. They weren't allowed to make noise. They weren't allowed to cry. They weren't allowed to sing. They weren't allowed to ask questions during church. I mean, the training grounds for their life of influence it started in the home. It started in the church services. It started when they were underneath us. We controlled aspects of, before we controlled, were worried about controlling the music choices in their life, we were controlling the cartoon choices in their life. We were controlling the book choices in their life. We were controlling, how much time they, when they got choices to do things, what they chose, we might tell them, well, okay, but you're not going to do that. Well, I thought it was my choice. Well, it is, but this is a better choice, and we're going to make that choice for you. So sometimes it was being 100% in control. As much resentment as the world has for that kind of thing, the result is if you do it young enough,
When they're young.
they're not damaged, and then you don't have to do it as much when they're older. So if you're worried about the kind of friendships in this world that are done through social media, friend you, I like that, and you're very shallow, and you won't do the work that's necessary to protect your children. But if you don't care about that, you're going to do what needs to be done because you've been given the responsibility and you're going to answer to God someday. I want my kids, when they're able to make their own choices and make their own friends, be able to do it in a way that pleases God. And so the practice ground is that they're going to do it in the way that pleases me. And when they're young, they don't have a choice. I choose for them, and then I tell them, you're going to have a day when you're going to choose for yourself. If you choose right, you'll be able to live within that choice. If you choose wrong, for a little while, I'm going to come back and change your choices. And as you grow older and you get wiser, you'll make better choices, and that has to do with so many things. So you talk about friends, you talk about music, you talk about TV influences, you talk about direction, where kids are setting their sights anymore about what they're going to be when they grow up, what they're going to do. It's absolutely insane when I think about how many preachers have their kids in the ministry, and then their kids are interested in the world, in the secular world.
Right.
They have more interest there, and I can't understand that. Because the choices that we have been making has been to come out from among them and be separate, saith the Lord. And God called me into the ministry. When He called me, did He call my wife? Well, if my wife has to look, you're married now. That's one of the hurdles you had to get over. So I don't know if I want to be in the way. I'm not married. I don't feel called to do that. Well, you wouldn't be. Your husband would be. You're called to complete him. So now that you're here and you're married, it's like, hey, you ain't got a choice. You're an assistant pastor's wife, and someday a pastor's wife. And so, well, what about when you have kids? Automatically, there's an aspect of your kid's life that the will of God is predetermined by the leadership that God has put and influences that God has put in their life. To ignore that and then promote secularism within the home, you actually open up an opportunity for the devil to set up camp in your own house by doing that. So there's a lot to this thing of influence, but I just want to come back and say that. Go ahead.
I actually want to kind of jump in right there.
Yeah, jump.
From experiences growing up in Japan, we obviously had very limited amounts of English-speaking
Sure.
influences. Of course, we're ministering to the Japanese people out there, and we, for the most part, as kids, understood that, hey, these kids they're not quite, going the right direction. But there were a couple of instances throughout growing up in Japan that my parents allowed us kids to be influenced, or at least to have relationships with other families. There was two families that I remember growing up. One of was a Pentecostal background family. They were there originally as missionaries, but the dad had since basically gone away from that, and he was doing Western weddings. That was basically his thing. But they were from a Pentecostal background. Another family, which was later on, basically in my teenage years, they were of a Lutheran background. But they were at close enough proximity to where it was not once in a blue moon. Like all the other missionaries that were in our BIMI, the missionary group that we were in, they were hours and hours away. Usually we only saw them once, twice a year. So their kids, we would fellowship with and be friends with, but that was only once or twice a year kind of thing. But these two families were within, one was only like 10 minutes down the road, driving-wise. The other one was like 25 minutes or so. You'd get there by bike on either way. So, but I remember that just we were allowed to play and interact and do all this that kind of thing with them. Now, I don't ever remember a time where they ever influenced us in this sense of being Lutheran or being Pentecostal.
Talking doctrine.
Yeah,
Right.
doctrine and stuff. It honestly never came up. But I remember looking back, and I was actually a couple weeks ago talking with Jewel about this subject, but those things were allowed in our lives. And my oldest brother, he went away to Bob Jones and was allowed to do that because he showed an interest in computer science, and that was the degree in that was his course of study that he wanted to pursue. And of course, there's no Baptist college that offers any computer science secular recognized degree, but liberal arts colleges like Pensacola, Bob Jones, those kind of things, those places that Baptist churches send their kids to who are interested in that. You want to go to a Christian college, then go here.
And Methodist, and Pentecostal, and
all that kind of stuff. So anybody and anyone and their monkey's uncle who says they're religious can go to these places and get their own degree in that field. And my brother, he's in the secular world working, has a good job with a well-recognized company. But he grew up in a missionary's home. He grew up in a pastor's home, essentially. But he chose to take that route. Now, I think that the influences and and I brought up those two families because it was never really pushed. Now, I had conversations with my parents before about, why do they believe this, or what is exactly is it that they are different from us in? And those questions were answered, but it wasn't really really
addressed
pushed
to all the kids. It wasn't addressed to all the kids.
Well, I have no idea what the conversations were that they had with my brother.
Sounds like they did
But I'm
more
just
of a
saying-
positive explanation of what the differences were, not
Well,
so
they
much
gave
a
us
warning.
not so much a warning. It's just like, hey, this is what they believe, and the Bible doesn't teach that. Is basically how
It wasn't a point of concern.
right. And they knew enough, and I knew enough that it wasn't what we were.
Right.
But I'm saying that as the influence might have gone a little bit further and deeper than what they were expecting.
Right.
In that, okay, if they were allowing this kind of influence that are not Baptist, they're not biblically the same as what we are, but they now also are allowing in the secular influences that basically my brother pursued, and he's not a Baptist anymore by his own profession, and having that. And I'm wondering if maybe even looking back at that could have possibly started obviously way back then. It's not an impossibility. It's certain probably more than likely is how it started. Of course, Bob Jones, they don't believe in the King James Bible. They don't believe in the preserved, inspired Word of God.
That's why our college choices are very important as
Very
parents.
important. And I don't think my parents, if they were to say, if they look back, that they would make those same kind of decisions or choices at the same time. But this whole discussion and what we're trying to address on this is that you want to try and get these influences nailed down now, before they become a problem, before they become effective, before they become an issue. I grew up in the same home as my brother did, and I didn't end up where he was. So what was the difference between that? Well, I made different choices than he did. I had different influences, or maybe because of some of the things that my brother did, my parents were a little less keen on allowing me to do certain things that he was.
I think,
So-
correct me if I'm wrong, I think too, I think some of it is determined by when the kids go off, if they continue to allow themselves to learn. So I feel like you went off to college. You went to a college that was more conservative than Bob Jones was. It was a local church, but you continued to grow. Even when I met you and sitting down and having discussions on how we believed, and you were always willing to be stretched to grow if you had biblical principles, and you could show that from the Bible.
Right.
Sometimes when you go to places like Bob Jones or Pensacola, it's more learning the trade than it is applying the scripture, and so that kind of stunts your spiritual growth. But you're right; it's so important early in life to see how those little influences and being loose. I call it being loose, and I know what it's like to be in a Reeves conversation. It's everybody's wrong, and this is what's right because it's the Bible, but we talk about how they're wrong, and so that always comes off as negative. But the truth is, I think it's really what sharpened all the pencils in the box, all the crayons in the box, and allowed them to understand, hey, I've got to continually put before me. I can't just take the things of the world, implement in my life because I see something over here or something over here. I've got to be able to have the ability to be prudent and look down the road and see where that ends up, because that is some of what you form your decision-making process on today. So you're right. It's things. Jill and I look back on decisions we've made, and I think we wish we'd have done some things different. But hindsight's 20/20, and you learn and you go forward. But it's good. Pete.
Yeah, I was thinking about, in response to what you were saying, sometimes as parents, we may look at kids and say, well, those kids aren't bad. They're not going to have necessarily a bad influence on my child at this moment. But what we forget that we're teaching them is we're not teaching them just that this person or this family or this association is wrong or bad. We're teaching them how to choose associations. So when they're 20 and they're having close friendships with a Lutheran family and a Pentecostal, let me just say, families with different doctrines, they're not being wise in the choices they're making with their associations. But if they learn that when they're young, because you're loose on how close you allow your kids to get with people of different faiths, different doctrines, different, even in the same church, you can have people who are just, at different places in their growth spiritually, and you need to be, because you are teaching your children by what you allow without necessarily sitting them down and telling them, I think their times come for that as they get older in their teenage years. But when they're little, you don't realize you're teaching them a pattern of how to make the choices of the friends and the influences in their own life. And they're going to then grow up and make the choices and the influences there. And then there's one other thing I really wanted to say. We're talking about associations and influences today, and that is all outward. It's all the things that press on you from the outside. Obviously, we all know that living for Christ comes from inside. It comes from the heart, and it's the choices that we make with the heart. We are influenced by the things from the outside. But that is why some kids can have the same influences and still choose right, love the Lord, because their heart is toward the Lord, and some can't, some don't. So I guess by talking about the outside, it's not saying the inside's not important. It's just saying this is one of the things that you have to guard and watch.
Wear clothes, right?
Just wear clothes. And
I do want to say this. This week we heard some preaching, and I know Johnny Pope preached. He made some statements, and we discussed it when we got in the car and talked a little bit. But I'm going to discuss that because I think, Pete, this applies a little bit to your mom and dad. 50 years ago, Bob Jones College, the doctrine and of the Methodists of what Bob Jones was, maybe that's longer than 50 years ago, lined up more with the conservative Baptist, or just
fundamentalists back then were cross
fundamentalism
denominational
was
lines.
something. You're right. You had fundamentalists that were Methodist, fundamentalists that were Baptists, and so on and so forth. And so when he made statements about, my day, and he named a bunch of different kinds of denominations, we all got together and had meeting and fellowship, and the whole room said, "Amen, amen, amen." Well, you're drinking stupid juice if you think that's going to happen today, and anybody trying to move to that is going to transition their church out of the King James Bible. Right. It's just no way around that. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that Johnny Pope is dumb. I'm saying that he's not taking consideration what the Methodists were, Baptists were, all these other faiths that he said he remembers getting together with in meetings and having real good fellowship with. What they are today, they're poison to each other. And mm-hmm. I wouldn't fellowship with them.
Well, how did we get in the milquetoast mess we're in now?
Yeah, that's
because
exactly
we were
right.
all there was a generation that was just being quiet to get along.
And I'm hoping our movement is smart enough to see through that. I'll give grace to him. I understand his point he's trying to make. Mm-hmm. But the truth is that there are some things our movement needs to stop trying to hold on to because nature has plucked it out of our hands. We don't have it anymore. Mm-hmm. It's hard enough for me to go to a meeting like that and sit around and sing the songs of the faith with people I know that aren't separated the way they should be, or are moving towards the world, or and still let the major fundamentals be our tying bind, but knowing that they're headed that direction. We're just not going. We don't have leadership in our movement that's pulling us in the right direction of truth. All these leaders are pulling us towards the direction of themselves, their camps and their personalities and their taste of fundamentalism. So if we're all pulling towards truth, then we're going to come to the same decision, because truth is truth. Mm-hmm. So when it ends up being, well, that's not the way I see it, then you have to stop and go, well, do I want to influence my church members and bring them out here? If you're not seeing the same way that I'm training my people here. And I learned a long time ago with this church, I'm not taking a busload of my teenagers to a youth conference where men are preaching that have contemporary music in their pulpit. I'm not doing that. Mm-hmm. And just because they got a cool name and they can say piffy things on social media, preachers want to ignore those lines, you're condemning the future. We won't know an independent Baptist from a Jehovah Witness, and it's just the way it is. And the same thing with our kids, growing our kids up. So I just want to throw that out there.
I did want to say something I was thinking about as far as the parents.
You wanted to say something? That's awesome.
On the parents' side of things, Pete's parents could have looked at their kids and said, or in their mind thought, kids have no one to play with,
right,
or no one to interact with. So that's why they let those influences, come into their lives. And I also thought about us growing up, grew up on the backside of the desert for 4 years. There was nobody but our siblings. But the difference, I think, is...
But even when we were in Georgia, there were kids, but
I don't remember that. So.
Yeah, well, I'm telling you. But I'm telling you, it's not just...
You didn't let us...
Go ahead.
Right, you didn't let us hang out with whoever we wanted to, or whoever wanted us to hang out with them. But it's, as being a parent, not looking at your kid and feeling bad that they don't have someone to be a friend with when they do. I have someone there, and there. I have my parents who I get to be friends with.
Yeah, I'm kind of confused. I remember enjoying greatly spending time with my kids, and spending lots of time enjoying. It's not all work, but I mean, I really did enjoy feeling like we had a relationship further than just mom and dad, and kids or indentured servants or slaves or whatever you thought you were. But no, that we actually built friendships with you at early ages and made you feel like it's like sometimes you'll say, man, Dad's my hero, and that's special to me. But I think that started years ago when we became friends. We just built a friendship. I've never felt bad that you couldn't have the wrong friends.
Right, right.
For sure.
Just you can't make me feel bad. I don't.
And there always were good friends along the way, or friends that maybe we wouldn't let them go to their house, but we could have them over to our house. You know, I think we were very careful about sending our kids out from underneath our eyes,
Right.
where we could just kind of keep an eye on things and an ear on what the conversations, where they were going.
So we can reach them if they were.
Well, sure. So
Do you think there are those that are parents, though, who look at situations like being alone, their kids being alone? Do you think they feel bad, which makes them make that choice?
Yeah, I think it's all depends about how you build your culture in your house. Like, you know, when you have a larger church and you have a Christian school and you have a schedule that is many times you're taking your kids and you're separating from them because you're putting them in the school, I think that produces actually an opportunity for the kids to gravitate to the wrong influence, but it also takes away the opportunity for the parent to be the overseer in your life. And then you got to ask, well, who am I trusting in to oversee those important parts of the, and if you've got people in it that don't even go to church regularly, they don't have standards, they don't go soul winning, they're completely on a different, and you got to ask yourself, well, why are they teaching my kids again? Because pastor just needed somebody to put in that classroom to babysit those kids, because that's what it ends up being. It just becomes babysitting.
Or they
And-
had them sign a paper to say they would abide by things, but there's no belief
Yeah, they
in their
don't do
heart.
it.
And they
Yeah.
can't teach your children
right.
those things if they really don't have that belief. They're just conforming by signing a piece of
Right.
paper.
So, you know, I just think that I would encourage everybody, no matter what size church it is, mom and dad need to sit down and ask themselves, who did God give these children to? The church, the school, or to us? And better take it personal. Just like you take your finances personally, you have to take raising of your kids and their influence and choosing those influences. I think it's the dumbest thing that might ever happen with parents is they feel like, I'm going to trust my kids to choose the right, and just encourage them to choose the right friends, and then leave their kids to make those choices. It comes back to bite you in the end. And I think it comes out of a shared, deep-rooted laziness with the parents. Because this is what happens. I don't want you around that Johnny kid. Why, Dad? It's hard to stay positive when you got to tell them why. You're never going to be perceived as positive if you got to tell your kid why you can't hang out with Johnny.
Johnny's too nice. Don't you learn to be that nice?
he is.
Oh boy. He's way up there with the way
But
too
I'm
nice.
serious. I'm serious because the Reese family constantly, and even in our family, I think sometimes we all get a little tired, feeling like we're always negative. But we're always in ministry mode, and the idea is we're looking down the road, and if we one kink in our armor, we aren't vigilant about where this relationship will take us. It ushers in a whole problem that ends up destroying our family, changing Christmases and Thanksgivings and ability to be on staff together and work together. Trust me, I know what I'm talking about. I've seen it.
Yeah.
And that's just the way it works.
So I think to kind of go along with that, today I was kind of thinking about when the earliest time I can remember feeling the difference between like what a ministry mode meant and understanding the difference. And then I was thinking about friendship. Mrs. McMurtry did a really good live broadcast on friendship and stuff. And I had watched that this week. So I was thinking, and then I forgot we were even doing this subject. So it's all kind of culminated. And I was thinking, man, when was the earliest time I can remember that feeling of the difference between having a good friend who you can trust that if you go out of line, they're going to put you back in line. They're not just going to be your friend and follow you off the cliff or push you off the cliff or, you know, they're going to be that good close friend. And then the difference between that and you being the good friend, which is essentially ministry mode. And I don't remember, I was second or third grade. We didn't go to people's houses. Very rarely did people ever come to ours. I can't actually remember. And if they did, they didn't stay the night. And we were in Georgia. And I remember my dad and my mom came to me and they said, do you know Mr. So-and-so or brother so-and-so from church? And I said, yes. Well, he has a daughter who's your age, maybe right around the same age. I don't remember her name. I can't remember his name, but they had a split home and he had her every once in a while or on rotation. And he was really struggling with some things with his daughter and making good choices because she went to public school and I went to Christian school. And so Dad came to me and he said, listen, I think I'm going to let you go to this girl's house. I'd met her before because she'd been to church. I'm going to let you to go to this girl's house. They've invited you to go to dinner and stay the night. He's like, but I need you to understand some things. This isn't just a fun thing that you get to go do. You have to understand that you need to be a blessing and a help to him. And sometimes his daughter is making bad choices. So you have to be aware, and I want you to be a good influence. Now, this is on years of having.
That'd be one of those things I would like to take back.
Yeah, I know. Wow, I'm surprised we did that.
No, and I do think you guys did. I think afterwards when I came home, and I'll get to that in a minute, when I came home, we did sit down and we talked about what went on. And you were very honest with me. You're like, you know what? We probably wouldn't.
We'll never do that again.
Won't do that again. And because of how things went, and it wasn't terrible, I was like, sounds good to me. But no, I just remember I went and he picked us. He and his daughter picked me up. And first thing out of the gate, they're like, where would you like to eat dinner? We hardly ever went out. I'm like, McDonald's? I don't know. He's like, no, where's someplace you've never been before, but you've heard about, or something, we're talking.
Burger King?
And his daughter's like naming all these places off, and she gets to Chuck E. Cheese. The only thing I know about Chuck E. Cheese is the cool commercials I'd seen every once in a while, and it's like got the not a video arcade, but like the games, and you get tickets
games.
or whatever.
Right.
And so I was like, well, that sounds like fun. But I'm an idiot. I've never been there before.
Right.
And we step in, and the moment we step into Chuck E. Cheese and the music is blasting, is like, how old is a third grader?
Like 8 or 9.
So 8. I'm 8 or 9. I'm standing going, bad choice. Very bad choice. And I just felt.
We had that experience on our trip.
Oh, did you?
We went into a TGIF to find something after the late
loud.
Like a TGI
and
Fridays?
walked in, and it was like, blah, 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 blah. I mean, literally, I'm like, turn around, about face.
Yeah.
You wouldn't even be able to talk in there.
And of course, I'm 8, so I'm not going to look at him, the adult, who is just trying to give us a good time and say, oh, I can't go in here. So we did. We got pizza. And then he gave us some coins or whatever. He said, go play. You can go play some things. And I remember his daughter really wanted to play this dancing game. And I was like, I don't dance. So I was like, how about, I was really good even at that age at not saying I don't do something. I was like, I want to do this instead, Let's go throw the basketballs and get tickets that way. Plus, I was much better at it, and I could get more tickets doing that. That's what I told her. So we did that for a little bit, and I just remember we went back to the table to get something to drink, and he must have been pretty good at reading because I just felt like so uncomfortable. And I thought, if I just play this game real fast, we can go back, we can eat, we can get out of here. And he was pretty astute. He looked at me, and he's like, are you tired? And I said, yeah, I think I'm just tired. He's like, well, we can get out of here. And now looking back as an adult, I think he knew I was uncomfortable there anyways. And of course his daughter's like, oh man, Dad, we didn't even get to do this, we didn't even do that. And we cashed out the coins and tickets and got our little prizes and we left. Then we get to the house, we get set up for bed, and she wants to watch a movie. Just fine. And we ended up watching, I think, the Nutcracker, which has the ballerinas, right? Which was fine. Halfway through the movie, she gets up and she wants to start dancing around like a ballerina. And her dad is sitting on the couch. And she's like, come on, Hope. And I'm like, I don't dance. And especially not in front of strange people. With your sister, maybe.
You danced with me?
And with my dad in my house, I would twirl around, but never. And even as an 8-year-old, I just felt like, no. And I remember I realized this is the second time she'd asked me to do something that involved dancing. And I was just like, I have to say something. And so her dad left the room to go get something to drink. And I don't remember her name, but I just said, hey, I don't dance. She's like, well, why not? It's so much fun. And I was like, well, because the Bible says we shouldn't show off our bodies. And she goes, oh, that makes sense. And she sat down. Do we need to pick a different video? And she was just so great. And I remember in that moment, I felt so relieved that I had finally just after
you had stood up and were an influence.
And I was an influence. And I wasn't just a protect myself, don't do this because this is wrong for me. It was, okay, I'm gonna biblically explain from a child's perspective the best they know how, because it's the right thing to do.
And for a third grader, that's pretty good.
Yeah, so we had a pretty good time for the rest of that. I got picked up the next morning, or he dropped us off, I don't even remember. And I went home, and I remember Mom and Dad asked how did it go, and I just started crying. And Mom's like, what happened?
Well, it's
And
probably
it
one of the
was
reasons we
nothing.
let you do it is because you were so serious about serving the Lord, even as a third grader. We're
So
like,
I felt like I had to sit and I confessed my sins about going to Chuck E. Cheese's. And I picked it. And,
She walked on glass up the stairs.
yeah, no. And I just remember my parents sitting there going, why are you crying? You did great. And I told them about the dancing and all that and how I had to say something. And
We felt bad because
that's how
We put
and I
you
could
in that position.
Right. And that's what you said. And you said, you know what? Mommy and Daddy shouldn't have put you in that position. We probably won't do this again. And I was like, awesome.
David danced.
But
Eric Perez says
David danced.
he also committed adultery. Anything else you got to say, buddy?
Anyways.
I'm sure David wore bracelets on his wrist too. To remember
So
to
I
pray.
just
No.
all of that to say this. Even at the time when you were allowed me to go over, you made it very clear it was to be an influence. And we had that very open, as an 8-year-old, very open dialect about why and what was expected. And then when I came home, it wasn't just, hey, did you have a good time? Yeah, high five, let's go on with life. It was to sit down and tell me about it. And not because of any, I needed to be grilled. It was
the whole
just
process.
Right. And I thank God for that, because I've always been able to, even in whatever's going on in my life, sit down and have an open, I just did it with Dad today, just have an open dialogue with my parents, with two people who know me, I know them, who love me and care about me, and they want the best. They want the best for me. And I never felt like, as much as even some of my extended family was like, oh, you're so controlled, I actually never felt that. I felt so free in a way that none of the friends, when I did go to that school and had friends, they always felt like they had to hide things from their parents, or I just never had that weight. And I never understood, when I looked at my friends, I never understood how they could choose that.
Most
parents
kids
were
that feel like they have to hide stuff feel that way because their parents gave them the stuff to hide.
exactly.
We just didn't give you the opportunity to go get those things.
the
But even on the
inconsistency.
times when I think you did, I felt like we got fair warning. And so that was the first time I ever remember ministry mode. And I remember being exhausted the next day, just emotionally and mentally. And then I prayed for her for forever. Now I can't even remember her name, but I prayed for her, and I don't know anything about her situation or her life now. But I think that was the first time, as much as you guys look back and may have regretted that, I feel thankful for it, because it made me clearly know the difference between times of investing in people. When they need you to be the strong one. They need you to be able to look at them and say, no, we don't do that, and this is why.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Instead of a selfish
Instead of a
friendship.
selfish,
The
oh, I get to go have fun with all my friends.
And the subject matters that come up in churches that are growing, when you allow your kids to go fellowship, really does take the danger out of those things that are bad influences. Like you talked about the movie and the dancing and the Chuck E. Cheese and the music. But it's gotten so watered down in our movement that just this past week, a preacher stood up and talked about going to the movie house. And we're all sitting there going, what? You know, we just not going to go to the movie house. By the way, I don't know how my family's taking this, but I don't give a rip what they think about what I'm about to say.
Right.
It's wrong. It's wrong. And
Yeah.
I mean, I appreciate faithfulness of men, but when you stand up in a pulpit, a bunch of preachers in the room, and you act like going to the movie house is
It's
normal.
normal, and you don't even
God,
know
No,
that
sir.
most people wouldn't.
No, that's not normal, and it's still not normal.
Yeah.
Maybe it's become normal in your liberal church,
Right.
but it's not normal
Should
in
be
our
normal.
church. But you're right, Holt. Go ahead.
I have a story that's very similar.
Oh, good.
I don't know if you guys even remember this. It actually popped into my head when Hope was talking about hers. Do you guys remember in Brewster? I went with Blaine
No.
to a rodeo.
Oh.
Yes.
We let you go with.
I thought that was. I thought mom and
Remember
dad
that?
were crazy.
That explains a lot of things.
Wow.
Well,
What were we
I remember
thinking?
similar conversation beforehand, but it wasn't like, hey, try and help them. I'm not really sure
You knew
why.
better.
I'm not really sure why, to be honest. I think about it now, and a lot of the memories just are not. I don't have all the details, so I don't really remember. I do remember you mentioning something about now. You have to make sure that you don't go into any places that, like, if they go to a place where there's liquor or beer, you tell them no, I can't. I just remember that. I don't remember going with them. The whole time, they were great. I don't remember. If they did drink, I don't remember seeing it at all.
They probably were very respectful. That's
Yeah,
probably why.
The reason you went was because Brewster was a town of 22 people. Blaine was the kid of the people that owned the
Right.
only restaurant in town.
Right.
That's
and I was
right.
tired of driving 60 miles to get a cheeseburger. So I was hoping we could win them and I could get
Yeah.
a decent meal in my own town.
which didn't happen. But
It's all
yes.
selfish, brother.
Yeah.
Sacrifice Will for
Yeah,
a
for a
cheeseburger.
Yeah. I do remember that he was the one that kind of prompted his parents to come and ask,
Yes.
and you guys wanted to, kind of. I remember a little bit of that, but regardless, like
We
I said,
told
look at
you
it
what
now,
to
I'm like,
expect at the rodeo, too.
Yeah,
That we was going to
well,
be music that wasn't right.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you told me about some of that, but I just remember sitting there, and almost the same thing happened. Only this one is like you're in a rodeo. You don't get to pick and choose what you go to.
That's right.
Like just what happens down there is what happens. And I remember they had a clown come out, and the clown did this routine. Sometimes they'll like. Have you ever seen the clown with the big fat suit? And he's like dancing around with the music or whatever.
Yeah.
That's basically what it was. But he was like breakdancing, and he had this glove that he put on and started like dancing around. And I remember immediately I'm going like, I am in so much trouble. I am in so much. I'm in trouble. I'm in trouble. It's all I can remember. It's just like,
Dad's going to kill me.
trouble. I don't know why I sat there and thought that I chose to go. Like I don't know why I went. Anyway, but I remember getting home and the same thing happened. They're like, "How'd it go?" And I'm like, "I committed a sin against God. I'm going to hell."
I guess we didn't learn. Huh?
I just remember I remember being like, I don't want to do that again. So
No, I think that speaks to one of the reasons we mess up with our children is, and I'm being honest, I think really that was during that time with David and you that I was trying to consider whether or not I was going to let you play some
Organized sports.
Organized sports. Remember, and Mom and I were talking about it. It was during that time when you're out and there's nobody around and your kids don't. I think that does weigh on parents.
does.
Yeah.
And I think we were just like, okay, well, how much trouble could he get into? You
Right.
know,
And that wasn't the first time that I've ever done something with Blaine in our little town. And of
Right.
course, we're talking
We broke
22
windows together
people.
with
Yeah,
them.
no, that wasn't it.
That was
Shot at propane tanks together.
That was David and I did
I
that.
know.
That wasn't Blaine.
I just sat there. I don't know what you mean by David and I.
locked Hope's cat in somebody else's house.
I didn't do that.
Yeah, right.
You kidding me? I would have shot it.
It's probably true.
But I remember, there were several times where there's a playground kind of around the block behind that. There's a Lutheran church in town. Can't remember.
UC
Church of Christ.
Methodist, like
Yeah,
Church of Christ,
UCC.
something like that. But there's a playground back there. The camp, the only park in town was basically
It's attached to
dead
the
grass
school.
and sand and
It was
a swing set.
It was sand volleyball. volleyball pit.
Sandbars.
I just remember we'd go over there and play sometimes, and Blaine would come down and we would talk. But I do remember one of the last times we played out there that I witnessed to Blaine and ended up leading. I remember at young age, I'm like 7, 8. Actually, I was almost 9 before we left. So I remember at 9 feeling concerned about his salvation and wanting to talk to him about it. And I remember going through the plan that I remember, because even at a young age, you grow up hearing it. You just, and so I'm like, you need to know. And I went through the plan and I asked him, and he seemed very sincere and seemed like, yeah, I want to do that. And I remember leading the Lord, and I came home and I told you guys. And of course, a 9-year-old, you're like, good job, Johnny. It's like, okay, we don't know what you said, but maybe, it's better than nothing,
You
right?
believe
Exactly.
that.
So, and he may not have, who knows? But I remember having that desire, and that was instilled because we had parents who wanted us to be a good influence on the people that that we did come across. I think there's a big misconception today that parents who are careful about who their children hang around make their children apprehensive about everybody. Like everybody's like evil. Well, that's not true. We were taught to be friendly to everybody. I can be friendly to everybody, but I don't have to stand up and say, this person's my friend.
Right.
Or call them and text them. You can just be friendly to everybody, and then...
That's a high school mentality in a public school, is where this is my BFF, and nobody else can. You can't talk to him, and he's my best friend.
Right.
And there's always competition.
Yeah.
So I had no idea that you led your first soul on that playground. So did I. It was just
Blaine.
a girl.
It was Blaine.
No, it was a girl.
Blaine Arena.
And I remember Mom let me use her Soul Winning New Testament.
Oh, I did from memory.
And I was like so scared I was going to forget, and I did. I forgot 90% of
The
where the
average
verses
kids
were.
in fundamentalism don't lead people to the Lord until they're 18, 19 years of age.
It's crazy. I just thought it was crazy because I didn't know that. Well, at least I don't remember it.
Maybe
I didn't remember that about
I did
either
it,
of
and
you.
you just think.
Oh,
it was,
maybe.
I'm just kidding.
No.
I'm joking.
But I do think
Or we tag teamed up.
that's a big part of
Maybe
influence.
not. No, it wasn't Blaine. Mine was a girl. She was blonde.
No, I don't remember.
That's a big part of influence as far as a parent goes, is when you're talking to your kids and they're talking about their friends. Is I know you guys knew that we expected you to be a good influence. In other words, so the conversation always went that way. And you knew we would be so proud of you. The reason you would have led that kid to the Lord and told us is because you knew that would, that was something that we would honestly be like, wow,
We were
good
excited.
job. Like, we look in your eyes and we're like, you
that's
care about
good.
someone other than yourself and just playing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's,
Well, I remember the sincere questions like, "Are you sure?" Like, because at 9,
Why were we asking those questions?
Because you wanted to make sure that I was
That you
sincere.
were
that you weren't just
Yeah,
trying
and I
to
was
get
thorough.
praise from
Exactly.
your
Yeah,
parents.
right.
Yeah.
I wasn't saying that in a demeaning way. I just meant like,
everything makes you feel like you are being doubted when it's not you that is doubted. It is
Human nature.
Were we irresponsible with the gospel? Did you say
Right.
what needed to be said? If
Was
not,
it
then
1,
I
2,
would
3,
rather
repeat
look
after
at you. No. Yes, it should be that.
no, I said, was it? Was I just like, hey, just
Well, I'm
repeat
just
this
saying,
prayer?
I'm saying I ask the questions not to judge what you did. I'm asking the question to judge whether or not I need to teach you from that something more. So it was never about condemning you, although that was often how it came off with you kids. When we question you, it makes you feel like, what? I thought you'd be proud of me.
Don't trust me.
Yeah, I don't trust me, or I did something wrong. When the truth is, no, I was just wanting to make sure that we build off of that. I'm glad that the child got saved. And
So the girl that I witnessed to, it wasn't actually on the playground. It was a little further back. I don't know. But everything there is like a field, a flat. If it wasn't dust, it was sand. If it wasn't sand, it was sand burrs. So it's a little bit further back. But I do remember, I think a year later, she came to our VBS and she got saved again. And I was so offended. I do remember that.
yeah, I know how that feels with a certain daughter of mine getting saved every 2 weeks. And every time a guest preacher came,
Joel does not know what you're talking about.
Right. Well, David, what
story you have?
Just listening to what everybody's saying, would you say that maybe the nucleus or maybe a pillar of this thing when it comes to friendship would be creating a spiritual-minded culture inside of your home when it comes to friends? Because obviously there are times, and it's natural, I think it's all natural, all of us growing up, all kids growing up at times to feel lonely or feel secluded and want to have that friendship. But that, when I say natural, that's the flesh part of us that God created us with companionship, just wanting to be around other people. If that's not tended to or grows inside of a culture that is spiritually minded, that is, when I say spiritually minded, I mean not just ministry minded, but I'm not just hanging around this person just to hang around them. It was always, okay, this person is different than me in these areas. I know they are. How can I strengthen them? How can I help them? It doesn't mean you don't have those times where you're just having fun. But I think socially we are really pushed to be friend-oriented today. Social media is all about how many friends that you have, which are fake friends.
Right.
Even inside of the independent fundamental Baptist circles, there's so many camps, so many, and I mean literal, not like flavors, but so many like Christian camps, so many conferences, so many fellowships to go to, and so many colleges to go to, where I think what tends to happen is we fall into this culture of just having friends just to have them. And biblically, friendship is always, when the Bible speaks of friendship, it's always talking about what should be given, not what is gained from friendship.
That's good.
I think to answer the first part of your question, you went on a lot of other stuff, but I want to keep back on that where you first started. You talked about creating a spiritual home, and that being the catalyst for the right kind of friends. I think like anything, you can create a spiritual feel to a home. It depends upon the depth of that spirituality. I think there's many Christians who create what other people in the world will look at and go, oh man, you're religious. Where we would look back and go, bad. They're not nowhere near, but they have a spiritual flavor. And I think when you leave a child to himself, just because his home has a spiritual flavor, and then think that that's going to be good enough to manifest a true strength in your children, I think you're fooling yourself. It's kind of like that movie, The Time Machine. I didn't make you guys watch, we watched, where they believed you could remove the Bible, God's word, and just be moral, and things would work out. And it showed that it's not the case. You can't remove Jesus from the equation.
I think that's what I was trying to say when I was talking about influence. That's exactly right.
So I think in our life, that's where that side of, the scriptures have always been iron that sharpens iron. It's always been strong. It's always been rubber meets the road at the scripture, even if it's something that we don't like. And it had to be the thing that was allowed to govern our home, because we could have a very tough situation and all be emotional, but the scripture had to be the final. It had to be the thing that we built on. And so it couldn't just be a feeling and us as parents sit back and say, well, they're in a spiritual environment, they'll figure it out. I see a lot of preachers creating, even their wife is in the ministry with them and going all hog for the Lord. And I think that's where you get people who get in the ministry and lose their kids, because they get in the ministry, they create a home that's ministry flavored and spiritual flavored, but they let the kids kind of just feed off of that flavor instead of making sure they're grounded and rooted. That's where confrontation comes in the home.
Yeah, that's really good. I think to refine what I was saying specifically about the spiritual culture is exactly what you highlighted there, and that is, it's not just spiritual culture as we're a Christian family. We go to church. What I mean by that is, why do you have a friend? What was the purpose of our friends? We weren't allowed to have, sleepovers just to have sleepovers. We weren't allowed just to have friends over just to have friends over. Everything had a purpose to it, and we knew what the biblical idea behind a friendship was. It wasn't a friend-oriented culture.
Sure.
Now, I'm very thankful that God put us in a small area, population-wise, in a small church. And I think it's important for people that grow up in the small environments to realize the gift that they've been given by the Lord. And I'm not saying this to knock on bigger churches or bigger environments or things like that, but there is some protection, some safety, and some natural things that happen as a result of being in a small area.
Sure.
And you're not going to run to the church and just so that you can talk to all your friends. You're talking to your family. That's who you've got at church. You got, a few other families here and there, but it's not about friends. You go to school, it's your family.
Sure.
So the reason I said that was because what tends to happen is we want friends so bad. I think it was George Washington that said it's better to be alone than in bad company.
Right.
He even understood the importance of learning how to be alone, rather than just trying to reach out and have all of these friends, even though the quality of those friends is not good. Yeah. I don't know if what I'm saying is getting lost on everybody. What I'm trying to say is there's an environment created that tends to give you to be influenced negatively just because it's about friends. And if that's all you care about is friends, and we have a lot of college, I was in a big college, and college not bad. It's in every single college, every single church in the world. But I see a lot of young people where it's like they've got the little cliques, they've got the little friends, and that's not necessarily bad, but they're not looking at their friends on how they can sharpen them. And I know that because the conversations that happen are not iron sharpening iron.
Right.
You read biographies and autobiographies of missionaries back in the day, or people who have done something. I'm thinking of, I think, Adoniram Judson, who was one of the first American missionaries, Baptist missionaries, to sail across the ocean. He didn't sail across as Baptist, but he read the Bible, found out that he needed to be baptized, and when he got there, he got baptized, became Baptist, and then lost his support from his Methodist, or from whatever church. I think it was Methodist. I don't remember. But before all that happened, the culture that they had with their friends was they were getting together to discuss Bible principles. They were praying. They were asking the Lord to do things. And the culture that we have today when it comes to friends is, what's your favorite basketball team?
Yeah,
what's
baseball.
your favorite baseball?
Right.
You know, even when it comes
All
to even
social.
it's very, very social oriented. And I think it's just important that, yes, you can have friends, but why do you have friends? You should be encouraging, and that will be a natural separation, a natural spiritual filter on the proper friends. Because honestly, I didn't have a whole lot of friends that just flocked to me, even just the 9 months that I was at a bigger
Because
Bible
if you
college.
care about spiritual things and you
Right.
want to
And
discuss
that's-
them,
and
some
that's
people just go away
because-
from that.
Right. And it's not because I'm some ultra spiritual guy and I'm just like carrying my Bible up, by my armpit. That's not what it's about. But there are times I don't mind goofing off. I don't mind playing football and basketball, if you call it that. I don't mind those things. But I was always looking for a time, just naturally, it was built into me over the years of being in a family that cultivated spiritual conversations, that I wanted to talk about, hey, what are these things that I feel like are these guys are missing? And naturally, that will separate the people from you that aren't iron.
Right.
Because if they're wood and they rub up against iron, they're just going to get cut or they'll get burnt up, and they're just going to go separate ways. And I still have a few friends that contact me constantly, and we don't talk that often, but they're ones that I can sense that want to be sharpened. They want that spiritual friction, and that's what friends are. That's the purpose of friends.
That's good. And sometimes people want it only to a certain degree, and then they shut you off like a spigot. I've had enough, and I want to go back to my baseball series and March Madness and all that other stuff. But they know who to call or who to talk to or who to contact when they're talking about souls getting saved or direction of fundamentalism or things like that. They happen to be right on. But immersing, you guys are very odd people. Hate to break it to you, but you've immersed yourself in this Bible, and that's what you're trying to live. That not just sprinkling it on you and occasionally pulling it out of the drawer or out of the closet, put it on and wear it to a organized religious service, and then go home and hang it up. It's like, no, this is what we believe all the time.
And to go back and really highlight that alone part, being alone, it's so important. Look at every great man that was ever used of God in the Bible. There was a great period of time where he was alone.
Yeah, that's true.
You think of Moses, he's on the backside of the desert. Think of Paul, he went to the backside of the desert for several years. You think of David, he ran from his enemies for several years. There's just constantly, Gideon was behind the threshing floor by himself when an angel visited him. There's just multiple times where you have to learn to be alone. And it's dangerous because we live in this socially connected world where everybody has to like everything. And something that I've slowly growing in my social media, I don't know if you'd call them principles or doctrine or whatever, but learning how to kind of filter how I operate on social media.
Your persona.
No, not persona and how people view me, but how I operate. Okay. So like one of the things that I've learned over the several years that I've had Twitter is I don't need to follow people that I don't know. And it's not that I'm not against them, but if I haven't met them and they follow me, I don't follow them back. And it's not because I'm not for them. It's just I don't need to have 1,000 friends. And you go through people's social media and you look at their followers and who they're following, the count, and it's like, people sit there for hours looking through all their friends' stuff, and it's not healthy. You don't need all that. Be alone.
You cut that down by looking at who they follow, not what their stuff is. Following them and look at their stuff. You just go through and see who they're following and who's following
Right.
them.
I'm just saying, even a good quality person, you don't have to have 150,000 friends. You don't, because everybody has an opinion. Everybody's a sinner. And
Doesn't that make
what
you more
always
right
happens,
if you have more friends?
no, but what happens in
That's what
highly
people
populated
think.
areas?
That's why
Morals
bigger
always,
churches are doing it better. So, we go to conferences, and all the conferences are at bigger churches. I would like to have a church invite me that's smaller, has a great conference, but our mind doesn't. We don't comprehend that way, and so that's the way it transfers, and that's why social medias are. Nobody takes the time to clean up their feeds, to clean up who follows them, block who they need to block, and keep things clean, because it's work. It takes a lot of work.
It's been a while since I've done it. I'm like looking. I'm like, I need to go back and check real quick.
Well, I think too, it's not just
too.
it's not just people you follow. It's things that you follow. I tell the girls this all the time. I find it interesting. I can tell when they're struggling and what they're struggling with. When I'm getting some attitude or some stuff's going on, and I just go look at their Instagram, and I'm like, hey, and I'm a good friend, so I'm gonna be calling you on it. What is this junk?
Yep.
And you can't be following this stuff. And feeding yourself and all this influence. It's because that's what it is. It's going to influence you. What you watch on TV, how much you watch TV, what Instagram especially is one of those. It's like you're just following these frivolous, it's just funny. Well, it's funny, and then they're dropping cuss words and vulgar, and then you become used to it. You desensitize yourself, and now it's embedded into you. And eventually it comes out in your attitude and how you respond to other people. So it's very dangerous when you just live like what David said with the mentality. It's just more. You just want more.
Proverbs says the key to that, and this verse just came to my mind when you were talking about that, is to work, to do something with your hands. And that's something that our parents were very good at. And we didn't have a lot of idle time where we were running around doing nothing, or we were sitting on our phones or playing video games, watching TV. We were doing something. Proverbs 28:19 says, he that tilleth his land shall have plenty of bread, but he that followeth after vain persons shall have poverty enough. Mm-hmm. And that's, of course, in context talking about your social media, who you follow.
Yeah.
Being facetious there.
Yes.
But he that followeth a vain person, the principle is the same.
Yeah.
Who are you following? Get off social media and go do something. Go till your land.
Well, and
what's the purpose of your social media too? It's like media. No, you should have a purpose. No, it's not to find a husband.
No, it's not.
Teasing you.
Yeah.
She is available.
Oh my word.
And I was going to say, even to women, the verse that says, the foolish woman talking about her house, plucketh it down with her hands. Mm-hmm. It used to always baffle me why it didn't say plucks it down with her mouth, because usually that's the problem. Mm-hmm. But that's because exactly what you're saying. It's because the problem is if they were using their hands and they were busy, they working. They wouldn't
be running their mouth.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. They wouldn't be a busybody.
Mm-hmm. I'm interested for Courtney's viewpoint on just going to a bigger school for longer. I mean, I went for a few years, but second and third grade. So I didn't go through my high school years.
Yeah, well, the first thing I did want to say is, David mentioned it, I did come from a bigger church, a large IFB church. But one thing I'm very thankful for, my parents would always say, in our family, your best friend should be your siblings.
Amen.
And that was their mentality, even in a big church where there's opportunity to have so many friends. They always said your best friend should be your siblings. And if you can't get along with your siblings, how are you ever going to be a good friend to someone else? And then Will touched on this a little bit, but looking for opportunities to be a friend to someone. They taught us the difference of having a bunch of friends just to have them, because you're insecure and you feel like you need to have a bunch of people around you, which is not, it really shows your heart that you're insecure. But even those friends that my parents said, no, you can't necessarily be friends with, you can't hang out with, but how can we look for ways to be a friend to them? And I remember, I think it was like 7th or 8th grade, but there was a family that was coming to our church. It would come off and on, not all the time. But there was a girl that I think she was a year older than me. And it was one of the families my parents said, you can't be friends with her. But one Thanksgiving, my dad got us all together, and we went to the store and we bought Thanksgiving groceries for them. Awesome. We bought them Thanksgiving dinner, we brought it to their house and gave it to them. And that was a really good example for me. because it's one of the families couldn't hang out with, but my dad looked for an opportunity and said, but how can you be a friend? How can you, show
That's
Christian
good.
love?
And I think the mindset that your parents had, obviously you guys had that, and your dad, mom and dad the same, is exactly why we can sit at this table and be from those different areas and still all go hear things and go, yeah, that's good. Think about this. It's hard to have the wrong music when you have the right friends.
That's good.
And we always talk about how influential music is. And we want to argue over, is it Southern Gospel bad? Is CCM bad? Is this bad? Is this bad? And people get mad at the preacher when he stands up strong against it. But all it does is open a window into your personal life that you have chosen very poor friends. Because now you're defending that music because you have to defend your friendships. And it just goes from there. But I feel like if I taught my kids to ministry mode, to always look for that opportunity to be a blessing to someone else. If you're going to be a friend, you have to show yourself friendly. The true biblical definition of a friend is not what someone can do for you. It's what you can do for someone else. And so teaching them that and I knew would be helpful to when I had to say, this is not the best music. We wouldn't allow you to have your friends let you have a friend that listen to that kind of music. And so it all just kind of worked like dominoes. It works together and builds. But if you don't have that straight, and I heard you on the phone in the truck talking to your sister in Missouri. Still best friends. Still friends. You want to know everything that's going on about the kids. Everything. So I would hate to grow up, get married, and you have to go to a different house once you get married, But I would hate to think that you would lose that aspect of what you grew up with, and you'll never lose it because that's what your parents taught you. So that's good.
Well, I was just going to say, going all the way back to what Joel and Peter were talking about, how parents sometimes feel bad that their kids don't have much or many friends or a lot of opportunities. If you go back to what David said, you start realizing you're actually doing your kids a favor.
Yeah.
To teach them to be, like Courtney said, secure. They don't need a zillion friends. They're, and that when they do have friends, it's how are they helping them? Because just having that mindset, it's kind of like really in the bigger independent fundamental Baptist circles, if we would stop trying to focus on fellowshipping and focus on the truth. The fellowship is the byproduct.
Right, exactly.
The truth is how could two walk together except they be agreed?
Yeah.
The truth is what brings you that closeness of fellowship.
Sweet fellowship. Yep.
Of going the same direction. And I think people vex their righteous soul like Lot when they constantly try to have these friendships and these connections with people that do not believe the same. Yeah. They truly are vexing their own life. Because you're much stronger being...
Be not unequally yoked together.
Right. And it doesn't just mean unsaved.
Right, exactly.
I think there's a couple of things that I wanted to say, and they're somewhat disjointed, so I'm going to try and jump off of yours real quick, because part of what I wanted to say goes hand in hand with that. I think there are some parents that you've actively have heard, I've actively heard, if you're in the ministry, you've actively heard them say, well, I don't want them to be socially inept or socially dysfunctional or awkward. Well, too bad it's going to happen. No, I'm just kidding.
I don't know any person that doesn't feel awkward.
Right, JT?
But that really is, the only reason that worry would be there is if they didn't have a ministry mindset or because those social relationships, that ability to converse, that ability to, see social cues, things like that happens at church, in ministry, when you're ministering to people with parents who are telling you, hey, pay attention.
If you're trying to influence someone, you've got to know how to get them.
I can't tell you how many, we all have said it. We didn't grow up with a ton of friends. I wouldn't exactly say that all of us were grew up the way that a lot of people think you need to in order to be socially fluent, you know, like
Well adjusted.
well adjusted and able to just jump in and talk to people. Now, I'm not gonna say that we weren't awkward, and you know, I used to look at pictures of us when we were kids, and I'm like, whoa, yeah, I wouldn't want to talk to us either. But
Doesn't everybody say that?
I think,
about
yeah,
themselves,
probably,
though?
yeah. But I've looked at a lot, you know, in some of the business dealings I've had, or like in working at the hospital, a lot of the relationships that I built, and I always stop and go, man, that was really easy to talk to them. And I've walked away from conversations and gone, do you know how many years of my life I grew up knocking on a door, talking to someone I've never met before, trying to build a relationship, initiating that myself, and
Getting them on the bus.
exactly, and not a fake I care, a genuine I care, and how that relates when you're talking to people in the world, and how you can be so friendly, and people look at you and say, "You are my friend," whereas that just comes from, we had parents who wanted us to do what was right. And I like the word you used, it's a byproduct. That fellowship comes as a byproduct. If we do the basics, the other stuff comes as a byproduct. And I don't think parents need to feel like they need to compromise anything for the sake of, well, they need to be socially developed, you know, and make sure that they're not weird and awkward. They're going to be weird and awkward, but if you do things right, they're going to be just fine. They're going to be just fine. And the other thing that I wanted to say real quick was, I can remember, and I think each of us may have our stories of ways that we've struggled in this area. I do remember when we were going to that Christian school, when you were an assistant pastor, and I remember there were a lot of kids, and I remember I wouldn't exactly say that my viewpoint of ministry mode of friendship was correct at that age. And I can remember looking at...
You were 6, so...
7, yeah, 6 or 7. But I can remember Aaron... who, you know, like, he's my best friend.
Yeah.
Now, this was someone that Dad, Aaron's dad, was someone that Dad ministered to. You know, and
Went out soul winning
went
with.
out
We
soul
became
winning
very
with.
good friends
Yeah, you guys were
over soul winning.
Exactly, you guys were very good friends. But I remember becoming close friends and calling him my best friend. We were friends, and I can remember everything that we've talked about, like these things of like. Like, you're my best friend and no one else can have you. I remember having that. I
literally
remember
wow.
looking at that and being like, that's my best friend. You can't be talking to my best friend. And, you know, in school, all the immature little things that really a lot of people have taken into adulthood because they didn't have that part tempered. Now
They stopped growing.
Yeah, they stopped growing. But I think about, you know, when you guys followed the Lord's will and we moved to Nebraska, and I remember that being so hard and feeling like, oh, it's such a bummer, I don't have my best friend. And I look back at how that was necessary. Like, I am so
Thank
thankful
God.
that happened, because not only did it teach me, you know, not that I can't still be a good friend, and I've texted Aaron and we still talk and I'll have some questions, and, you know, we're still a friend. But what is a best friend? What is that? Is it all those immature little things? Is it like, you know, we sit next to each other, we like the same color, we're, you know, just like schoolgirl kind of garbage? Or is it more than that? And I think I wouldn't have been able, and I will say this, I think that there's a part of that kind of friendship that is very addictive. It's it feels so good because it's about you. I think there's people, because I've seen in my own life that as I've gotten older, searching for that same feeling, that same relationship that I had where it was like, yeah, you know, buddy, when I really had that. I had that. And I think about it a lot now, and I look at relationship that I have with David, and I feel a lot of that same, but I know at the same time, you know, even though we're brothers, and that's kind of just, you know, I'm not going anywhere, we're related, I have the right version of that. Right. So, but I can remember searching for that, going to youth conferences and being like, I got to find somebody to be my best friend.
Well, that's why so often young people marry wrong, because their idea is who's going to appreciate me and fulfill my needs and make me emotionally feel special and unique and awesome.
Affirm how I feel.
Exactly. Instead of looking for someone who can I be partnered with to serve the Lord with?
Right.
Amen.
And that's, I mean, who goes around thinking that about marriage? Well, hopefully godly young people do, but so often we're training our kids how to pick a mate when they're in 2nd and 3rd and 4th grade, because they're just picking friends based on fluff.
Let me ask JT in the booth. He's a another person that's kind of from a different perspective, and grew up only child in his home, so he didn't have any siblings to be best friends with. I know he talks a lot about buddying up with his pops, and but then the struggle in the bigger churches. Or tell us what you're thinking about there, bro.
Yeah, wrong one. Sorry.
There you are.
Yeah. So the growing up, I was about 45 minutes away from church and about 30 minutes away from school, and I of course had friends there, but not so much in my neighborhood. And my cousins always had friends in their neighborhood that they'd go over to their house, and they'd have them over to their house and that sort of thing. And as I'd say probably 10-year-old or so, there was a couple of people that moved in the neighborhood that I became friends with. But it was always interesting because I just as I was thinking about it, those friendships didn't last too long for a couple of different reasons. One, of course, I was just having the parents that I had, I was taught to be more spiritually minded. You talked about having that sort of culture. So every last one of them got an invite to church. Mm-hmm. Even though we were 45 minutes away from church, they still got that invite. But I remember one in particular, they pulled up a WWE game, and I didn't grow up watching that, and I mean, they're all half naked or almost totally naked, and I just wasn't comfortable. So that friendship didn't continue. But I think about as I got older into the teen years, my best friend was a friend where we built a friendship around the bus ministry and that sort of thing. Now, sure, we also we had Star Wars that we liked and video games and that sort of thing. But there was a warning that I wanted to throw out. And that was, those things aren't wrong, but if you have a friendship that's based around spiritual things, make sure it stays that way. Mm-hmm. Because I had a friend of mine tell me one time, well, if you were on Xbox more, we would hang out more. And I look at that and I'm like, then you were never. You weren't really my friend because of spiritual things. Right. So that's a caution that I wanted to throw out. But I think most of everything that you guys talked about, I look back and I go, whether on accident or on purpose, a lot of those things I found in my life as well. So that's what I wanted to share.
Well, I'll just say this in closing and letting Bud take over from there. For Daniel chapter 1, verse 20, talking somewhat about the Hebrew children, it says, in all matters of wisdom and understanding that the king required of them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and astrologers that were in all his realm. And pretty classic that when they attacked Israel, they would go after the children of Israel and then employ them to be teachers and leaders in their kingdoms, the pagan kings. Because the children of Israel were 10 times better educated, better behaved, had great wisdom, ability to communicate, obviously had the right God. And so, and I would say that is a lot like today and throughout time. The world has constantly noticed that people who raise their kids, they raise them for God, they are 10 times better educated, they have ability to communicate, they have wisdom. I would say a lot of those things. If they're trained well, they're cleaner, they're sharp. They don't have to be, rich, but they know how to do a lot with a little. Mm-hmm. And the world loves that. They want to hire. So many people have wanted to hire my kids, whether it be a hotel or hospital or, you worked. Where'd you work? When you were a teenager, did you work? Oh, I actually had you only at daycare, so I wanted to hire you. You worked in the world, though. So you're in business. And people, they have good conversations with my kids, and they like them. Other churches would want to hire them. The thing about it is, I didn't stop with them being better because they were just smarter or wiser, had biblical principles. I told them, if we're going to be 10 times better, you have to have more humility. about you than the world does. So you have to always stay sensitive to that because, and we've seen this, how people look even at this program and they'll watch you guys and they say, boy, they're cocky, boy, they're prideful, boy, they're, But I've seen you guys in action, and we visit churches, and you always are reaching out to try to engage and be friendly to people, almost to, I think, sometimes to a fault. You're nicer than I would be, that's for sure. But that's good, and I'm proud of that. But it's often you're being 10 times better as far as the things of the Bible is often a target as you are prideful. And that will never change, and you'll always feel that way, and you'll be hurt by people, even in our circles, who will look at you and criticize you. All I can say is put your head down. Best friend should be Jesus. He's the one that sticketh closer than a brother. Mm-hmm. Your spouses should be your best friends. Your sisters and brothers should be your best friends. Your mom and dad be your best friends. Right. And just love Jesus and keep working and do your best to have humility and to review things and ask if you can find a way to do things 10 times better than you are doing them. Because you're going to have children to raise in a more wicked day than we raised our kids.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And you can do it 10 times better than we did it. So let me just encourage you on that. Right influences, the right people to be around is crucial. And preachers, when you go into conferences, be careful. Just don't turn your kids, your teenagers loose.
Right.
It's so important that you guard them until they walk out your door as a man or as a woman married.
That's good.
So go ahead.
All right, we're going to go to a song. Before we do, I want to make sure to remind everyone, don't forget the next segment is The Third Degree. We would love to hear the difficult questions that you have to ask, so you can ask those in the chat, or you can text us, 920-940-8275. Send us your hard questions. Give us the third degree. Before that, we will go to a quick song here. Have You Met My Friend? We'll be right back. Nice, Hope.
It was her.
Oh, Courtney. Very nice. Welcome to the segment where we answer your questions, no matter how difficult they may be. Have at it. Give us the third degree. Courtney, what's your problem? No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
The third degree.
She's feeling under the weather. I'm just kidding. Give us a third degree. We didn't have any questions come in. Actually, we had one at the beginning, but it was answered already. So
that wasn't a third degree question.
It wasn't a third degree question. So
we have to ask each other third degree questions.
Third degree burn.
Were any of you ever really mad because you didn't get friends? Bitter? And if so, how did you deal with it?
I remember having a conversation with David when he was like 4th grade. And he really was disturbed that he didn't have any friends. Because we had some kids in the school, some boys, and then they had their parents weren't very strong Christians at all, and then they had left. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what you thought.
I think it's been pretty consistent with my life.
You're stuck with Will.
No, he's got Courtney.
Sorry, bottom of the barrel. That's all you get.
I figured out how to get a friend that can't leave me. Married her. No, I do remember that. I remember having a hard time when we moved to Brewster because Aaron and Isaac, they were our best buddies. Mm-hmm. And I was only 4 or 5, but I remember missing them.
Yeah.
Are you sure it was him you missed?
It was
mom.
the mommy. She spoiled him.
She did. Yeah. He was like another son.
She loved me.
Yeah.
You liked the way she
was
treated him
loved
because
him,
we
Mrs.
never
Ware.
treated
She was.
Yeah.
She treated him like a grandma.
What is this? Can people
Would.
be kind to me?
Is this what moms are supposed to be like? Oh, just kidding.
Nope.
I hope my parents
That's
die
what grandmas are supposed to do.
That's right.
And then trying to think of it. Then we had, I was talking to Courtney about this. You remember Kendall and Kaysen?
Yep.
Kendall and Kaysen
Yep.
came
Oh,
in.
yeah.
That was when we were here for a couple years. They were our friends for a while until they stopped coming to church.
Yep.
Theirs was quicker, I think. We didn't quite.
Will and Dave.
And then Will and Dave. Will and Dave
There
were
was
about
Will and
our
Dave.
age, and their
And Will and
older
Dave.
brother's name was Will, younger
I
name.
had a lot of
brother's name was Dave.
friends who were
Crazy.
brothers. I
And-
didn't know.
Yeah.
And did you
remember
know
this.
that their parents recently reached out to the church,
Really?
Thomasons, and asked for their baptismal
Yes.
certificate or something? They're joining a church
And a
like in
letter of
Arizona or
transfer.
somewhere.
Yeah.
Never know. But I remember them. I remember we had fun with them, and then when they left, I just remember being lonely. I just remember walking around just like,
You were the youngest.
I was the
too,
young.
so-
I don't know. Maybe some of that might be personality.
He had lots
and
of
I
feelings.
really do mean that. Learning to be alone
Yeah,
is,
it's good for
something
you.
that you have to learn how to
I wasn't
do.
enough for you, was I?
And I had a really good imagination too. But
You did.
He imagined that I was a different person.
And it
Yeah.
still didn't help.
oh man, yeah.
Wow.
I don't know if I ever got over that. I don't know. I
You
never
also
was
were the best
bitter
out of
about
all,
it. I
you were the
just
best out of all the kids with an
period.
imagination.
Oh yeah.
He could turn a pencil into a TIE fighter.
So
I remember feeling very lonely as a young person, about 12, praying faithfully for a friend, that God would give me a friend. And we had a girl that came to our church. So she lived, 6-8 blocks from us. And I was like, this is it. And they came 2 weeks, and then didn't come, and then came a week, and then didn't come, and, one of those kind of families. And and finally I'm like, this is not it. But it's funny because then I did have a close friend at school. Went to a different church than I did. We went to a school that wasn't part of our church. And it's kind of funny because it wasn't somebody that I would have picked to be my friend, When I was younger, it would be like, find the prettiest girl in the class and I want her to be my friend, kind of like what you were saying, a little bit
The
more
prettiest
on the
girl?
No.
You did that too.
That's about like Will. Find
Excuse
the prettiest
me.
girl. No, you tried to find the
Oh,
prettiest
I tried to
girl.
find
Yes,
the prettiest girl.
you
Yeah.
I did find the prettiest girl.
But it's so funny because
she's also blind.
the girl,
Her prescription is very bad, yes.
that the girl I did end up being very close friends with, the Lord actually honored my prayer. And we had so many spiritual conversations, and it strengthened me to be able to help her because she wanted it. And she thought my family was awesome, and she wanted to grow in the Lord. And she took on standards as a teenager from our discussions and things like that. So you just, God does honor those things in your heart, those desires, but we just have to have them focused in the right direction and not selfish.
We have had a couple of questions come in, so I'll go ahead and read the first one here. Jeff wanted to know. He said, I have invited friends who go to progressive churches to our church. Sometimes they will ask the same. I never know what to say. What would you say? I feel awkward after they come to our church and then ask us to come to theirs.
Okay, well, I'm going to answer this from
Yeah.
my perspective to my children. You have to have the right definition of friends. Friendships to me is always based on the ability to sharpen them. And so if it's conditional, and if you're afraid of the conditions, then it's not friendship. So you ask them to come to church. Now, I always say this to the kids. You never get into this agreement or try to make an agreement where you strike hands. You come to my church and I'll go to yours. That's just the dumbest thing in the whole world. Never make
Right.
that agreement. But if you're just inviting somebody, a coworker or somebody that you know that you're being friendly to, you have to ask yourself, why did I invite them? Because I believe at my church, they're going to find what they need. If I thought I could find what I needed at their church, I would go. But obviously I don't. Now, when they turn around and ask you to come to your church, now you're confronted with, I got to tell them the truth. You ain't got anything I want. There's nothing at your church that I feel like I would be going backwards to go to your church. And not to mention a plethora of different biblical principles that you can cite. But if you do not have the right definition in your mind of what friendship is, then you will always feel bad and terrible and feel like you got to eat worms, and almost sometimes people compromise and go, and that means they miss their church. I'll tell you how to get around that, Brother Jeff. Are you listening? Are you listening? Be locked into responsibilities at your church on Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday night. Mm-hmm. Be locked into exactly responsibilities at church Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday night. Let me say it one more time just in case the people in the back row didn't hear me. Be locked into responsibilities at your church Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. I'm sorry, I usher. I'm sorry, I work the invitation. I'm sorry, I play the piccolo. I'm sorry, I can't go. Even if I wanted to, I couldn't go. Now, I'm sorry, but I've got things to do. Now, if you invite them to your church and they don't see you doing nothing, they're going to push on you, and you're not going to have a way out. Mm-hmm. So go back to your church, walk up to your pastor, and say, "What do I have to do to have a job around here, so that when people come to me and ask me to go to their church, I can say, I'm sorry, I am the pencil sharpener for the pastor, and I have to be there 10 minutes early to make sure the pencils are sharpened." And so I've done that with all my kids. They've got responsibilities. Makes it easier when they're the people that they are trying to be friends with, try to pull them into their church.
So funny. It's like, we don't need any other answer than that one. I was literally, if no one said it, I was going to go ahead, because I've had this conversation, at the hospital before with someone I considered, that I'd been very friendly to and witnessed to. And this lady goes to the Catholic church in town. She's a devout Catholic. I remember asking her one time, "Hey, come to this special Sunday, And she's like, "Well, I'll come if you'll come to one of ours." And immediately, you feel a little, you're like, "Oh, I'm going to sound like a hypocrite that I won't go to theirs, but I'll ask them to come to mine." And that exact thing, I'm like, "Well, what are you talking about?" Like, I'm like, "Well, I can't." I'm like a part of this and a part of this, and I can't leave. Whereas it's not that way with most people that you're going to ask, unless you're talking to the pastor.
They're pew sitters,
right? So I love that. I love that illustration, and there always is a kind way to relay the other part of what you're saying, where you look at them and say, "Well, to be honest, the reason I'm inviting you to mine is because I think mine's the best church, so I'm not going to not go to mine." There's a nice way to say it, and of course they're going to say the same thing about theirs. But you just try and be a witness. You don't let that stop you from inviting those people.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Next question.
Okay. Next question. Brother Brudnack asks, what is your standard on who will influence your family and church by preaching in your church?
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think you put out a
pastor to pastor.
Yeah, I was just thinking about the tweet you put out about if you can help them and they can help you. But
I'm never fearful about what a man will preach in my pulpit. If I choose to have them here, I'm confident in the doctrine that I have taught and in my people. Even my new believers are not going to be enamored by a visiting pastor preaching something and then saying something that is contrary to what I believe, for two reasons. One, as that pastor leaves, or that evangelist, which I never have evangelists anymore, or somebody preaches in my pulpit, a missionary or whatever, when they leave, the next service I just get up and correct it. And everybody expects it, because I sat at the table today and said things about the preaching, and I just went to leadership conference. Good preaching, nothing wrong with preaching. Right. But I didn't want that influence. I didn't want anybody to think that, no, and I don't have any problem saying it, So I have that peace and that freedom in my pulpit as a pastor, because I've taught doctrine, precept upon precept and line upon line. I am 100% confident that I have nobody sitting in my church that is mounting a attempt to oust me because I preached or taught something. I'm just not fearful of it. So it makes me very free about who I can and can't have in my pulpit, but still I limit it to people who are going the same direction. So I'll tell you right now, I know this person will not mind me saying this. William Tyson and I, we don't see eye to eye on everything, but we're going the same direction. And so I've had him preach. He's coming to do our graduation service.
Right.
And here's the other thing. My relationship with William Tyson was based off of me contacting him through social media about a speaker he was having that I don't think I'll ever have. I just know I would never have him. So I was wanting to ask him, because he and I agreed on so much on social media as far as bus ministry, soul winning, dress standards. It seems like we believed a lot alike. So I was kind of dumbfounded by his choice. And so I just direct messaged him. I said, can I ask you respectfully, why would you have this man? He DM'd me back. You never had any kind of nasty spirit or animosity. You know, there wasn't snarkiness in his voice over the DM. I mean, when you can do that over a DM and it doesn't sound snarky, you pretty much you can get a beat on someone like that. And he gave me his sincere reasoning for it. Did it change my mind? No, I still won't have the man he had in. But I understand now. I understand, and if I pastored in his neck of the woods and the people and was surrounded by the culture that he is surrounded by, maybe, I doubt it, but maybe I would allow that. So I left Brother Tyson the right to be the pastor of Woodlawn Baptist Church, and Brother Tyson's always let me be the pastor of North Platte Baptist Church. And based on that, that spirit allows us to, and that we're both going the same direction, that allows us to stay in fellowship. Now, be very clear about this. Letting these people become my friends does not mean I need to have every moment of his life. I need to call him every 2 days. I need to like every one of his tweets. You ask Brother Tyson. I don't like all his tweets, not because I disagree with everyone. That's why I know he doesn't need me to like his tweets. And I don't have time to like everybody's tweets that I agree with. So getting an idea of where you stand with someone else off of social media is just about the dumbest thing in the world a person can do. And I don't do that. So I have people in that I think, first and foremost, can they help my people? And then can they help me?
Right.
And if the answer is no, I'm not wasting my time. If they can help me and help my people, then I still may not have them in based on some other issues, but I then shift to my second reason is, can I help them? And if helping them won't hurt me, then I try to help them. And that's all based upon what kind of attitude I perceive out of them. If iron sharpens iron, and the person, someone else that is wanting to be in my pulpit or a friend, and I'm considering him, but he never lets me sharpen him. I can tell he's never letting me sharpen him. Then it's just a waste of my time. I feel a friendship needs to be built off of a mutual understanding that sometimes we need to challenge each other, and at the end of the day, we walk away just as much friends as we were before. Kind of liken it to my marriage. I've been married 33 years. You should hear some of the nasty things my wife tells me. She is the meanest woman in the whole world. After every discussion that we have where I'm either too harsh or she's too harsh or just downright mean and nasty, we are still the best friends in the whole world. We walk away from that and we think about it because we're both going the same direction. We are married. We're one flesh. We want the best for our children and our life and our grandchildren. So we have so much vested in each other, and we're so confident of each other's heart. We can survive the times we don't agree. And that's one thing that social media, let me just warn all pastors, don't look to build friends off of social media. It's very hard to do.
That kind of answered the next one. So
Which
do you want me
was
to
it?
still ask that one? Brother Brudnack asked, Pastor Rees, what limits do you put on your personal friendships? Sort of answered that.
Yeah. I can still be a friend to somebody that disappoints me. Let's say Brother Tyson chooses to put out something that I don't agree with. I may confront him, but not on social media. You know, I might DM him, but the DM is not on social media. I may call him. He and I have each other's phone numbers, and we text. My son's. If my friends can't be my kids' friends, then I've done something
I was
wrong.
going to say that's a good point.
So I just was joking with David, I think, about this 2 days ago or yesterday. I said, "You guys keep stealing my friends," and it's
They
funny
just love us
because
better.
I don't mind that, and I think it's because
David's just milquetoast.
Brother Tyson's more your age.
That's funny.
Just you can't get hurt feelings sometimes when you see the subtweets or the tweets out there, and you feel like, man, those are directed at me. It's okay. You
Get thicker skin.
let people have their opinions, and if they're not man enough to call you personally on it, then don't put that on them. But you don't have to make a friend out of it. Something's happening over there.
Courtney and I looked up the same verse, so she's going to read it too. Yeah.
Proverbs 27:10. Thine own friend and thy father's friend forsake not.
Yeah, it's good.
It is important.
Doesn't say that I can't forsake your friends. It says
Yes.
you can't forsake mine. So I better choose right.
Yeah.
Right?
I do think it is important that you're, especially, you know, we all serve in the ministry together, and we work elbow to elbow with each other. So I feel like it's important that my parents' friends I can be friends with. Mom and I chuckle about this all the time. She
Hope
goes,
he's a better friend to people than I am.
that's what she says. I don't think that's true, but I enjoy almost the same type of people that you enjoy being around. I enjoy being around, and I think that just means that we enjoy God's people. So.
I do think that there's a aspect to it that you have to keep in mind. We have really good personal friends, and we have really good ministry friends. And when I say what's the difference, personal friends may be friends from our youth that are personal. I know Missy Cogley is your best friend from when you were a youth. Now, those kind of friendships we don't have to. We don't see Missy for maybe 5 years or 10 years, and then we'll go and we see him or we spend time together, and it's just pick up where you left off.
It's like you never were apart.
Yeah, and so and we don't necessarily agree on everything, and she knows that, and we know that, but we don't make it a
But the basic things we've kept the same.
We don't talk. We stay away from those issues.
Yep.
Because we know that those friendships are really best friends when they're kids, and we're respecting that, and that's kind of good. But our ministry friends, building those are fun because they are at different levels at different times, and I so much adore Pastor Tyson and his wife, and we love them. We love them dearly. They're good friends of ours, but we don't take vacations together, and we don't. I mean, we're just, how many miles is that to Maryland?
A lot.
But there's been times where they've been struggling that I would want to be there for them, and we're having a hard time, and they're there for us. And they say, we're praying for you, and we say, we're praying for you, and we do. We actually pray for them. So those are the people that when you look at, say, well, that's the kind of people I can trust to expose to my ministry. And you better listen, pastors, and I mean this with all my heart, you guys that have strong presence on social media in small churches, be careful, because your social media can cause you problems in your church. If you are establishing friendships on a social media platform and you're not establishing any friendships in your church, your best friends should come from your church, from the people you pastor. And honestly, I'm more loyal to everybody that sits in my church and says they're members of North Platte Baptist Church. They have my ear way before anyone on social media can police me. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Next question. This one was, I think it was probably emailed to us. Yeah. Texted. In this sinful world, this is for Pastor and Mrs. Reeves. In this sinful world, God's ways give us Christians confidence to navigate wisely. But how did you know when to address issues with your kids before they became an issue for them? This is from M.
Being proactive in watching our world So there's the world, the flesh, and the devil, watching how they operate. But then there's the church, or what we like to address as fundamentalism, because that's the circles we run in, and watching pastors, their children, and knowing that they can sin and they can do wrong, but watching the ones that are doing a good job, having their kids grow up, be faithful to church, keep the standards, be aggressive, be outspoken. We watched all that as the kids got older, and we said, these are potential problems. We need to be careful of this. And almost in most cases, the people that we watched while their kids were growing up, eventually we saw huge problems with their kids. So there was always a tweaking of what we did through the years. But, you know, I think, you know, watching the sin nature of man, knowing, you know, Jill probably knows how she knows better than anybody else how it looked inside an independent Baptist home, being a pastor's kid and having a goldfish bowl to live in and everybody's looking at you. Whereas I know what it's like to be utterly stripped down, pardon me, naked before man, and being sent to prison, and all your sins be exposed, and your family's a mess, and multiple fathers, and split, and fights, and chaos, and drugs, and alcohol, and cigarettes, and cussing, and I pretty much have gotten rid of all that, just trying to keep that cussing thing. So I had that perspective outside the realm. Jill had the perspective from inside the realm. Both of them are faulty, so we just tried to create a new realm, battling all those issues. And I feel like that is what's great about Great Plains Baptist College. I sent my kids to other colleges. I have staff that are from other colleges, and when we built this college or started this college, let's sit down and talk about what we don't want in our college, and let's figure out how to make that work. And so that's why Great Plains is the place you ought to send your kids to college.
Yeah, I think we talked about this, I don't know if it was last week or the week before, I think a couple weeks ago, about the prudence, foreseeing the evil and hiding yourself. And obviously you can't look down the road in your own child's life completely, but you, like he said, you watch other families whose kids are ahead of your kids. Human nature is the same. Society, you know, is similar as far as what other families are dealing with. And you keep your eyes open. And when you see something, you go home and start talking to your kids about it. And you have conversations. I mean, really, I feel like there's nothing new to say because we said a lot of it a few programs ago about talking to your kids. It's just you can't know what's going on in their head if you don't talk to them.
Yeah.
They can't, if you don't ask them questions. You have to ask them a lot of questions and give them time to answer. Then you can help fix the little disconnected, disjointed things in their head by using Bible principles and helping them process things properly. And that just takes a lot of conversation.
Go ahead.
I think just don't be afraid as a parent of people calling you extreme. Because I think a lot of parents are afraid of that. I know God gives parents the insight that they need for their children. I think sometimes that's ignored because of a fear. I'm very thankful for a father who a lot of people probably would have said the way that we were raised was extreme. Like, why do you got to correct that? They're not hurting anybody. Well, they corrected that because it would one day hurt somebody. And I look at this question that way. I look at it that way. It's sorry, I'm just trying to finish my thought. I look at it this way, how do you know when to address issues with your kids before they become an issue for them? It's like, if a kid picks up a rock in his hand, he hasn't hurt anybody yet. If he goes back, he still hasn't hurt anybody yet. If he's, looking towards a car or towards the road, he still hasn't hurt anybody yet. I think we live in a world where until a kid hurts something or gets in trouble or does wrong, it doesn't need addressed. When the reality is, it should be far before. It's just like what the Holy Spirit does. The Holy Spirit is there to tell us before we sin.
Yeah.
People think that the Holy Spirit's there just to be like, bad, you did
Convict
wrong
you
after the fact. When in reality, he's there to say, don't don't do that. You know what I mean? So don't be afraid to be that parent that everyone looks at and goes, wow, you're so...
Here's my question. Everybody thinks that old Uncle Bill was harsh on his kids. I wonder sometimes if those people have a brain in their head. Think about the life that I grew up in. Don't you think at any time that I ever thought that my parents were being harsh on me?
Yeah, every kid thinks their parents are harsh, right?
So if I'm now a parent who's trying to do better than my parents did, why would I enroll or take in things that they did that I felt was abusive to exercise on my kids? Mm-hmm. Oh, unless maturity said it wasn't abusive. Mm-hmm. So sometimes people just need to stop and have a cup of coffee and ponder a little bit. And I also think, I'll say this because I know Brother Steve asks a lot of questions, and I think there's a curious. He's curious about the dynamic difference between me and my brother-in-law, and I love my brother-in-law. Don't get me wrong; there is a difference, but here's the thing: he's my brother-in-law, but he's not my friend, and I'm okay with that because everybody doesn't have to be my friend. I got news for you, Brother Steve. You ain't my friend. I'm glad you're on my program today, and I wouldn't mind being your friend, but how do you be friend with somebody who's just nasty all the time about what you believe and assigns a bad motive to what you left things undone with your child rearing just because you put out things that are positive so that it encourages the next generation? I'm okay. I'm secure in the fact that if there is something that pops up and I am called upon by my family and I feel like that's in line to my duties as a brother-in-law, I'm there. I've made a commitment to my wife. I'm there. But I feel no obligations to come into the center of a family gathering and sing Kumbaya and hold each other's hands when we're not even on the same page. Mm-hmm. So if that's mean and hateful and spiteful, then all I can say is that when we get to heaven, maybe we'll have some coffee and talk about it. But until then, I highly respect my brother-in-law, and I think he's a great man of God, and there's things I disagree with, and those things cause me to say I'm not looking for a friendship there. But if we're both going to wield the Spirit or wield the Word of God, and I feel like sharpening each other goes two ways. And so if he says something, I consider it. Would be nice to know if it went the other way around, but it doesn't. I'm not looking to build a friendship. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to be who I am. Mm-hmm. So. Is that positive enough?
I'm positive it is.
You're positive it is?
On M's question, all the answers obviously are great. I'm not correcting anything. But I think just having that spirit that came with the question, which is wanting to learn, is so important. And just don't lose that. And remember that there are people that, if you have a pastor that you're under and a pastor's wife that you're under who have raised their kids well, and they point out stuff in your child rearing that might be uncomfortable for you to hear, try not to lose that sweet spirit that you have now before you have kids, of wanting to learn, wanting to absorb. Try to keep that when you have the kids. And it's hard because they're your kids. I'm sure it's hard because sometimes it's just,
and as a parent, you know better.
Right, you know better, and you want to make those choices, and you should. You definitely should, but just realize God gave you the leadership in your life for that reason. They see things, they've done it before. And so that's just, because I know Em, I feel like I can say that. Second thing is, are you guys expecting or something? She has a lot of child rearing questions.
Just getting ready. They're being prudent, right?
Okay.
That's right.
I'm disappointed.
And, I think there's I think there's a lot to that, hope, maintaining the ability to not get offended at correction or at instruction or at people like Steve liked to read into my subtweets. You're subtweeting your brother-in-law. It's like, well, you should sit out in the auditorium when I'm preaching. You know, are you
There's a reason
talking
we don't
about
live
me?
stream.
Yeah, are you talking about me? No, it's not just live. It's just not.
Right,
It's not
right.
about I'm talking about people in the country.
Right.
Imagine that. I would actually be talking about people in the room.
Exactly.
I may not say their name, but I whatever you call that.
Sub-preach.
I sub-discuss everything, you know, because
Sub-counsel?
yeah, but if you learn how to address that, you never need anybody to call your name, and it gives you the right and the ability to say, "I'm not the only one in the room. I'm not the only one in the room. There's other people that need this. Well, I might need it directly, and maybe something happened in the church. Everybody knows it, but if that's the way they look at it, then I don't care. I'm not embarrassed that I got nailed. I needed it, and I'm not going to let that hurt my relationship with my authorities and my leaders." So you're right, the spirit in which you ask the question and the spirit by which you receive the instruction afterwards, majorly important to your ability as a parent to actually guard your children's hearts in the future.
Let's get through the rest of these questions. I know
Oh,
we've
there's
kind of
more?
long today.
I didn't know
Yes.
there's more.
Brother Jeff asked, Pastor, have you run across a recovering fundie? If so, how do you handle that in person?
Not personally.
Hope has.
I have.
Well, he called the church. J.C. Groves called our church wanting to talk to me.
I never
and
felt
recorded
so
it.
violated in my entire life, by the way. I was so angry.
Of course, J.C., when you say that, J.C. says you're giving out a false accusation against him. Because
When I say that?
Yeah, because you say violated, that insinuates that there was something like
There was nothing inappropriate.
You would-
inappropriate.
He
but-
recorded me without telling me I was
It's-
on a recorded line.
Yeah, that's inappropriate.
Yes. And that's what she
That's all I'm talking
but he
about.
we make that statement, but he makes it creepy, like
Well, it
he
is
was,
creepy.
like he was being a creeper, and that we're giving a false accusation. So,
Well,
I mean, I don't know what to tell you, Jeff. I think we have recovering fundies that are even still in our churches today.
Right. I will say when he called the church and he said his name, I knew who he was.
Yeah.
And I just did my best to
Stay professional.
Stay professional. I didn't expect. Of course, I didn't know he was recording me whatsoever. I just answered the question he had, and
Yeah.
If you get a call from J.C. Groves, just assume that you're being recorded.
Well, here's
I
the
did
thing.
save his number. So if
Here's
that
the-
ever get a call,
Here's the thing. When
ignore.
guys like recovering fundies, if they were to reach out to me, some of them have. They've sent me emails, and I'll try. I always have this principle, whether it's on social media or anything else. If I never met you before, I don't know you, I've never seen your stuff, you reach out to me, and there's any kind of snarkiness in your address towards me, like you're talking down to me, there's not respect, like listen to me. I'm 55 years old. I've raised, all my kids are adults. My house is empty, except just me and my wife and my dog. I've earned what I have, and God has been so good to us and blessed us. If you think I'm going to let somebody who's a recovering fundie and has bailed out, listen to me, has bailed out on what I have stayed true to and fought for, that I'm going to have an overwhelming generosity to play their little games, it's just not going to happen. I don't waste my breath. The Bible teaches me not to. Answer not a fool according to his folly. But here's what I'll do. I'll give you one answer. And if your response back to me is you are trying to go around my answer, you're challenging my answer like it's stupid, or I can tell you're not wanting an answer, you're just wanting to argue,
It's not a discussion, yeah.
I don't answer you again. I block you, I get rid of you, I remove your email from I don't play those games. Now, if you behave, Brother Steve is one of those guys. I blocked him. He emailed me, I tried answering him, and it just became stupid. So I won't get his emails anymore. But here he is. He's being a nice guy on our broadcast. He's got it right there. There's his name. And he's joining in. And he's not being ugly to us. So why not leave him on there? He's bringing good stuff to our
table.
discussion.
Yeah.
And I like it, and I appreciate it. Who knows? We get to heaven, I might even say hi to him. But recovering fundies, I don't think they're man enough to actually approach me.
I think we spend all our time trying to help people not become recovering fundies.
Yeah. We're clearly
People who
against
haven't jumped ship, we're working on those.
We haven't run across too many, but we've run over a few.
And with that, let's go to the next question. In order of how it was received, this one's just a quick one. We kind of answered it in the chat, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What happened to two tweets? Two tweets was just.
We answered
it.
Yeah.
I want to make sure I'm asking all the questions so I don't ever get accused
For
of
people
not
who don't
asking.
see the chat,
Well,
then they wouldn't see
if
the
you've not
question.
watched all of the Brooks from the beginning to the end, you don't know that every season has a different flavor and different. We tried to change everything.
Most potent being the overtime.
And
Yeah, the
two
Brooke
tweets
overtime.
was simply.
That was the first.
Yeah, I think it was just the last part. Was it the last, or was it all season?
The Brooke
It was
overtime.
just overtime.
It was just a Brooke. That was
Overtime.
6 episodes of Brooke over that we
Tears.
just said,
Trolls.
let's take 6 weeks and just irritate the garbage out of these recovering fundies, and we sure had fun.
Oh, yeah, that was
I don't think we made very many friends doing that. But
That wasn't the intention.
I'm just trying to be positive.
Last question for the night. Mickey asks, what's the best way to keep a godly friend, especially when you're states away?
Do right where you're at.
Hope has friends that are states away.
Don't be so needy. To be a good friend, I have quite a few friends that I've met from college, and as Christy says, I'm just so popular. No, I'm not popular, but I do have some friends, and I think the key to keeping those good friends is seriously not being needy. I don't need them to text me every week, and the reason I think that they're good friends is because they don't need me to text them every week either. But occasionally, I get a text praying for you, especially Miss Christina texts me all the time, praying for you, Miss Hope, or Miss Sean, same thing. I was just thinking about you the other day, and
Remember their
I do
birthday.
the same. You remember, if you can remember their birthday and shoot them a quick text on, I don't know if it's National Friends Day. I don't do it to all the people I know, but I'll just pick somebody and I'll send them like a $5 or $10 Starbucks or Dunkin' gift card or something like that. But I don't think it's about all those things. It's about praying for them. If you hear they're going through a rough time, having the nerve to text them and say, hey, heard you were going through a rough time. I just want you to know I don't need a response. I just want you to know I am praying for you. I think we have degraded friendship and to thinking it's just keeping in contact and gossiping and talking about all the things going on in your life and talking about things going on in their life. And that's not always bad. I mean, you can have friends like that, but I think assuming that because you haven't heard from somebody in a while that they're no longer friends with you is a wrong and immature assumption. Life happens, and when you're miles and miles apart, what a friend really needs is for you to keep them in prayer.
Yeah, I think there's a measure of insecurity here. If you're going to be good friends, you're just naturally going to stay in contact with each other. Mm-hmm. If someone feels like that good friend, you're losing touch with them because, what is it? You won't call them, or they won't call you, or
then call them.
Yeah, just call them and act like nothing. Is what would be between you guys.
Right.
I mean, just you're good friends. I mean, it doesn't mean you both like the Green Bay Packers like you should, but
I just
not
think
everybody's perfect.
No, I think in the world of technology that we live in, it's I don't do a lot of social media, and it kind of annoys me when people only want to communicate on social media. But if that's their thing and they want to message me on Instagram, I will message them back. That's fine. It's not. I prefer texting and calling. Apparently, that's old school. I know
You're
where
so
I think
old.
letter writing is old school, but so I just think not needing it all the time to have. I only have a handful of really good friends. Otherwise, I look at it as I'm a friend and I want to be encouraging. So I'll occasionally text those people. That verse that you read about your father's friend, don't forsake. I think that's important too. As much as Mom thinks I'm a better friend, I don't think that's true. It's just I'm trying to not everybody has time. I know Mom doesn't always have time to reach out to these people, but that doesn't mean that she's
I
not
enjoy
their friends.
brightening my corner where I am.
Yes.
Yes.
When they come to me, I'm all there.
Exactly.
I'd like to add this one in here because I think
Go ahead.
we have a friend. Her name is Lori, and she actually owns Double Dips
Yes.
ice cream.
Ooh, amen.
And we have her coming out for one of our big days. Of course, we would like to have her in our church
All the time.
All the
permanently.
time. Yes. Is she
Permanently.
I'm gonna put it in the sound booth.
And and it's not because we get free ice cream.
Right.
Okay, we'll pay double
Although
for ice cream.
Yeah,
if we
That's
get
a
it
bonus
permanently.
too. No, just kidding.
But she said, great conversation. Even though I attend another church, I always feel welcome, and I feel like I'm part of your church family. So, wondering what type of friend I am. And here's the reality of friendship. As we love on Lori, in our mind is we would love to see her with us, and that would be great. But the sincerity of friendship doesn't change on whether she comes.
Right.
No,
Yeah,
no.
She is called. I don't know if I texted her or if I called her or what. But one day she said, "Oh, I'm having a bad day," and she told me a little about it. And I just spent time talking to her. I know I went to her office one day, and she was telling me, and I was, you say counseling. I wasn't counseling. I was just being a friend. I was getting in her life, being on her page, and giving some little bit of advice maybe on how to handle some different situations. I didn't ask for anything in return. It just isn't that way. There's no demands. I feel like that is actually pure friendship, even when you're not both on the spiritual exact same points on everything. And so Lori is our friend. Now, if I find out Lori is going on social media and tearing us, to shreds or talking about us behind her back, I will still be friendly to her. But the personal connection that we feel right now will be severed not by me, but by her, because she will feel conviction when she's in our presence. So I don't feel that with her. She is our friend, and I love her. I'm excited she's coming for Double Dips, Double Down Sunday.
Double up.
Double up.
What is it?
Double up.
Oh,
Sunday.
double up. Well, I'm doubling down on Lori being my friend. And
We love you,
I'm going to
Lori.
leave here after this program and
Go get
me
ice
some
cream. Yeah, buddy.
Of course, if she's listening to this, she's probably not at work. So, but love you, Lori. We do. Seriously, our hearts knit with you, and you don't have to worry about that. That's the kind of friend you are.
That's good. All right. Go ahead. Did you have something? Go ahead.
I was just thinking, and that's an interesting quality about people who are genuine and people who allow you to be different and have an acceptance for you in spite of the differences. And I don't mean the kumbaya, ignore differences, but I mean the genuine respect
Yeah.
for where you're at, and we can have a genuine respect for the things that she has, her the qualities that she has that are really admirable. And even though
It's
on some
unbelievable what
things,
she's done with
right,
that business.
Yeah.
Right.
I watch how she handles her girls.
Yep, her staff,
employees.
Her staff,
yep,
she
employees.
loves them. They respect her. I mean, you don't see that in the average world. So
Right.
there's definitely somebody, and you gotta, you
She's
know
a
what's
hard worker.
you know what's at the center of that?
She's
Christ.
Yep.
Christ is at the center of that.
Yeah,
And all it does is speak to her Christianity, and
Right.
so
right.
And we all do believe someday, Lori, you will be at our church, sitting next to me all the time.
Oh, boy.
Because Hope's needy.
Yes.
Because I am that one needy friend.
Yes.
Okay.
We want to thank you for joining us this week for the Brooke 3-hour episode. Goodness gracious. David has one thing
I
to
will
say.
say this for some reason.
Don't say you're pregnant.
No, for some reason we haven't been paying attention to our phone number that we say every single week, and so we have 3 or 4 questions on there. We will get to next week. Just
Really?
from like weeks
Past.
ago.
Oh, really?
Sorry.
I thought you were manning that.
I
well,
thought
tell
you were
everybody
manning it.
you're sorry.
Apologize.
I apologize for my brother's failure.
You know what? I
It's
should have
Courtney's
checked
fault.
on that. I
She's
should
one
have
of my
checked on that.
friends, so
Oh.
She should have texted you.
she did.
You have a friend?
Next week on it, the extended.
Extended.
6-hour
Extended.
episode.
Brother Jeff, you should be happy.
I don't know how we do this. Too many people.
I told
or not.
the folks at the table here, if all else fails and nobody listens to these things, each one of you can actually get in there, sit down with your kids and listen to these, and it'll be beneficial to you raising your children. So I'm not sorry for doing it. And I know sometimes it's lengthy and we could be doing other things, but I think in the long run, you'll be thankful that you have these things recorded.
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of The Brook. We hope you'll join us again next week at the same time in the same place for another fun-filled show. David, Pastor, Peter, Mrs. Reeves, Jewel, Courtney, Hope, JT, me. Thanks for being with us today. You can find this show in podcast form on our website, on YouTube, and on iTunes next week. And actually, last week's will also be available. We got behind a week because we were at the conference. But don't forget to like and subscribe if you joined us today on YouTube. Thanks for tuning in, and we will close out with a song, I Just Want to Please the Lord, Cicely Hamilton and Friends. We will see you all next week.